As if she heard Ling Chen's uncertain call, Ling silently opened her eyes. Within her beautiful, crystal-like eyes, there was a faint crimson-golden light flickering. Following this, system announcements began to ring out. Ding! Your pet Ling's grade has increased and has become a Saint Destroyer grade pet. All of her stats have been greatly increased, her passive abilities have become more powerful, and she has awakened her Phoenix God Heavenly Flames and Vermilion Bird's Flames. Her fire attack has become more powerful, her passive skill, Rootless Flames, has disappeared, and she has unlocked Golden Flames. Skill, Heaven Burning Flames, has been upgraded into 9 Inferno Heavenly Flames. Solar Laser has been upgraded into Solar Death Ray. Burning Fire Array has been upgraded into Heaven Burning Flame C. Pale Flames has been upgraded into Extreme Pale Flames. Heavenly Wrath of the Nine Suns has become more powerful. Dazzling Red Lotus has been unlocked. World Burning Heavenly Flames has been unlocked. Phoenix Sky Dance has been unlocked. Special Barrier Skill, Barrier. Golden Heaven has been unlocked. Illusory Skill, Golden Phoenix God Transformation has been unlocked. Ultimate Forbidden Skill, Pale Aria, has been unlocked. When the word Saint Destroyer sounded out, Ling Chen almost couldn't believe his ears. That's right, he had heard Saint Destroyer. They were two words that described the absolute peak for the Mystic Moon world. It was a level that the strongest beings in the Mystic Moon world, the Moon Goddesses, were at, yet Ling had suddenly risen to such a grade. Even though Ling Chen was just a player, he clearly understood what Ling's step from the Mysterious God grade to the Saint Destroyer grade meant, and he understood just how difficult it was taking such a step. However, Ling had just reached the Mysterious God grade 2 months ago, and now she had reached the Saint Destroyer grade that all beings looked up to. Only a matured Golden Crow would reach such a level. He had somehow received the Fire God's bulwark for some reason, and Ling had stepped into the unimaginable Saint Destroyer grade. Ling Chen stared at the extinguishing sea of flames, not understanding just what it was hiding. Although Saint Destroyer grade bosses were on a completely different level when compared to Saint Destroyer grade pets, it still represented the ultimate level that a pet could reach. As the system announcement sounded out, Ling's stats appeared before Ling Chen's eyes, showing him just how powerful the new Ling was. Crimson Spirit, Type, Beast Pet, Level, LV62, Grade, Saint Destroyer Master, Ling Tian. A descendant of the Golden Crow and Phoenix Royal Clan. After exhausting its life force, it was brought back to life by the Vermilion Bird's soul flames, and it received part of the Vermilion Bird's strength, becoming a fire spirit beast that possessed the 3 most powerful types of flames. It has a beautiful appearance and extremely powerful fire attacks, and it can release pure golden flames at will. Attributes: HP 21,600, MP 432,000, Physical Attack Power 43,200, Magic Attack Power 172,800, Physical Defense 320, Movement Speed 380. Elemental Resistances: Water -30%, Fire 200%, Wind 90%, Lightning 90%, Earth 90%, Light 90%, Darkness 90%. Passive abilities: can fly up to 100 meters high and carry many people. Automatically recovers 3% MP every second and is immune to all abnormal statuses debuffs and restrictions on magic attacks. Can absorb any form of fire damage and freely convert it to MP or HP, and owner and fellow pets become immune to fire damage. Flame Attack, Normal Attack, cannot be upgraded. Unleashes a golden flame that burns all targets within a 20-meter range with rootless flames. Damage dealt is equivalent to magic attack power. Consumes 10 MP, no cooldown. Golden Flames, Current level, LV2 max level. A passive skill awakened after combining the Golden Crow's bloodline and the Phoenix Royal Clan's bloodline, which is unleashed from and controlled by one soul. It is an ultimate flame that does not require nature's fire elemental essence to act as a medium. It ignores any fire resistance that any creature or item has, and it has terrifyingly high temperatures and destructive abilities. Effects: ignores all fire resistance, and all fire magic does not require any casting time. All fire type damage plus 100%, and all fire attacks contain a powerful destruction attribute, easily destroying anything that is weak towards fire. Can destroy or even completely melt equipment below Heaven's End grade. 9 Inferno Heavenly Flames, current level, LV5 max level. Unleashes boundless golden flames that mercilessly burn all targets within 100 meters, dealing 500% magic attack power to the targets, and has a 30% chance to add a burn effect for 10 seconds. After casting, even the entire sky will become golden. Consume 700 MP, cooldown time, 2.5 seconds, solar death ray, current level, LV5 max level. Condenses golden flames into a bright and burning light from the sun, shooting down a searing death ray from the skies to a single target. It deals fire damage equivalent to 1,500% magic attack power, and it has a 100% chance to add a burn effect for 10 seconds. Destroys all equipment celestial grade and below. Once locked on, it cannot be evaded. Consumes 1800 MP, cooldown time, 5 seconds. Phoenix Arrow. No change, Vermilion Judgment. No change, Heaven Burning Flame C, current level, LV5, max level. Uses golden flames to cover all directions, creating a destructive formation array of heavenly flames that burn all targets within its range. Covers 500 meters around the caster, dealing damage equivalent to 200,000 plus magic attack power x10, and it has a 100% chance to add a burn effect for 10 seconds. Takes 2 seconds to gather flames for the array. Consumes 24,000 MP, cooldown time, 5 minutes. 9 Suns Rebirth. No change, Phoenix Sky Dance, current level, LV6, highest level, LV10, level required to upgrade to LV7, LV70. A unique spirit skill of the Phoenix Royal Clan that uses the Phoenix God Heavenly Flames to condense many golden phoenixes that can be used to freely attack. The golden phoenixes can release an attack comparable to one's flame attack every 3 seconds, and their attacks can be dispersed or focused. All of the golden phoenixes cannot be destroyed, and the duration that they last for are equivalent to one's level, currently 62 seconds. At most, one can create 6 golden phoenixes, and with pale flames, one can create 6 by 7 golden phoenixes. Cost 60,000 MP. Cooldown time, 10 minutes. Ultimate skills. Barrier, Golden Heaven, current level, LV1, highest level, LV2, level required to upgrade to LV2, LV99. A barrier skill unique to Ling releases a unique fire that turns the 2,000 meters around her into a golden world of flames. Within the barrier, all creatures' fire resistance is reduced by 100% regardless of level or grade, including fire element beings. Causes those within range to take damage equivalent to Ling's fire attack every second. Costs 6,000 MP per second, and the maximum duration that it can be cast for is equivalent to Ling's level, currently 62 seconds. Can only be used once every day. Pale Flames, special skill, cannot be leveled up. A flame unique to Ling that is created by combining the Golden Crow's flames, Vermilion Bird's flames, and Phoenix God Heavenly Flames, creating a terrifying white flame. Once activated, all flames that Ling releases become white, and they completely ignore the target's fire resistance, dealing 7 times the fire damage and incinerating everything they come into contact with. After activating, all fire skills can be instantly casted and do not cost any MP. Lasts for 30 seconds and can only be used once every day. After activating, Ling's flames will become dormant for 24 hours. Golden Phoenix God Transformation, illusory skill that stimulates the Phoenix royal clan's blood and power, transforming one into a golden Phoenix God and allowing one to escape from the restrictions of pet rules. After using this skill, one's power becomes inauspicious. Costs 1 MP, lasts 4 MP/10,000 seconds, rounding down, currently 69 seconds, cooldown time, 1 month. Forbidden skills, Dazzling Red Lotus, the most destructive ability from the Vermilion Bird clan, cannot be leveled up. Concentrates all of the Vermilion Bird's origin power into a single point and releases it. The Berserk Vermilion Bird's flames blossom like a beautiful lotus, and under its petals, all life withers and burns. The effects do not differentiate between allies and foes. Damage is equal to magic attack power x 3x current level, and range is equal to current level x 200, and it destroys all equipment below celestial grade and destroys everything that is destroyable. Costs 260,000 MP and cannot use any Vermilion Bird skills for 1 hour afterwards. Cooldown time, 1 month. World Burning Heavenly Flames, the most destructive ability from the Phoenix bloodline, cannot be leveled up. Releases the cry of 10,000 phoenixes, filling the skies with extreme flames and turning the heavens and earth into a sea of flames. Causes boundless meteors and phoenix flames to crazily rain down, turning the area into a purgatory of fire. The effects do not differentiate between allies and foes, and the surrounding area will be completely filled with flames, causing basic damage equal to magic attack power x 200%. The largest range is current level x 500, and it can last for current level minutes, currently 62 minutes. Costs 420,000 MP and cannot use any Phoenix skills for 1 hour afterwards. Cooldown time, 1 month. Heavenly Wrath of the Nine Suns, a destructive forbidden skill from the Golden Crow's bloodline, cannot be upgraded. Releases one's own source of power and condenses flames similar to Nine Suns into an ultimate flame that can burn anything. When it reaches the peak of its strength, the flames of the sun can be directly used. The effects do not differentiate between allies and foes. Damage is equivalent to magic attack power x 900% x current level. The maximum range can be controlled within a range equivalent to Ling's magic attack power. Consumes all current MP and cannot use any Golden Crow skills for 1 hour afterwards. Cooldown time, 1 month. Ultimate Forbidden Skill, Pale Aria, a forbidden ultimate skill unique to Ling. When in absolute despair, it releases white flames to turn everything into dust. The white flames incinerate and destroy everything, the sky, the earth, all humans, the entire world, all evil, all impurity, causing everything to be reborn through a baptism in the white flames, returning to a pure world. Effects: sends all of the fire elemental essence in the world into rebellion, incinerating the heavens, and destroying the earth as well as all creatures within them. Can only be used once in Ling's lifetime. After casting, Ling's level falls to LV0 permanently, and she loses all of her flames. Ling's Tears. The difference between the Mysterious God grade and Saint Destroyer grade was currently displayed right before Ling Chen, and he was incredibly shocked. After reaching the Saint Destroyer grade, all of Ling's stats had been increased by many times, but the greatest change was how monstrous many of her skills had become. Her main skills had been greatly upgraded, and not only did they deal more damage, but their cooldown times were also greatly reduced. Before, the Burning Fire Array had a cooldown time of 2 hours, but after being upgraded into the Heaven Burning Flame C, not only were its power and range greatly increased, but its cooldown time was also shortened to a mere 5 minutes. After her flames became gold in color, Ling's skills, which were strong to begin with, became even more powerful. A powerful spirit skill, an illusory skill, a barrier skill, all of the skills' effects greatly shocked Ling Chen. The Golden Crow, Phoenix, and Vermilion Bird's ultimate skills were also unlocked. All of them were completely heaven-defying destructive skills, and compared to their might, the side effects were almost negligible. Back then, in order to activate the Heavenly Wrath of the Nine Suns, when at Heaven's End grade, Ling had to sacrifice her life. When she was Mysterious God grade, Ling had to fall unconscious for a long time, and have her level greatly decreased. However, now that Ling was Saint Destroyer grade, she merely couldn't use her Golden Crow skills for 1 hour. The Phoenix and Vermilion Bird's ultimate skills were also like this. A 1-month cooldown time was so short that it was almost unacceptable. After all, in front of these 3 ultimate skills, a large city would be burned to nothing, and even a normal Mysterious God grade boss would have its HP reduced by more than half. The Saint Destroyer grade, Ling was more than 10 times more powerful than the Mysterious God grade Ling. Ling Chen's strongest aspect was his attacks, but now Ling's overall destructive power far surpassed his. If she activated Pale Flames, the damage she could deal would completely eclipse Ling Chen even with Soul Sacrifice activated. Ling Chen silently calculated the amount of damage Ling's ultimate skills would deal with Pale Flames, and the results caused cold sweat to pour down his forehead. The Golden Crow was publicly acknowledged to be the being with the greatest destructive power in the entire continent, and Ling not only contained the Golden Crow's power, but also the Phoenix and the Vermilion Bird's power as well. The combination of their flames was not merely as simple as adding their destructive power. It had completely surpassed the Golden Crow's power. Even as a pet, although Ling's other stats were quite weak, her destructive power was no weaker than that of a Saint Destroyer grade ultimate boss. Ling Chen silently marveled in awe. With this sort of destructive power, Ling could destroy a city in an instant. This was simply too heaven-defying. This sort of power deserved a divine tribulation even more so than the Shura from back then. At the same time, the newest description regarding Ling confirmed what you had guessed back then. She wasn't just a Golden Crow, but also the descendant of a Golden Crow and the Phoenix royal clan. It was just that perhaps the Golden Crow and Phoenix God did not realize that their mistake had created the most powerful sovereign of fire. Master! Ling softly walked over to Ling Chen. Before, she was only as tall as Ling Chen's ribs, but she was now at his neck. Her smile was just as beautiful and cute, making anyone feel tenderness towards her. However, there was no joy and excitement on her face in response to growing up and becoming stronger. Instead, there was only a trace of sadness that caused Ling Chen's heart to ache. Ling, you've grown up, Ling Chen said in a soft voice. Did you find the one who was calling you? I did. Ling lightly nodded, lifted her face, and said, He said that my father has waited for me here for many years. He said that he gave you the Phoenix God Heavenly Flame's blessing and caused my power to awaken. Afterwards, he disappeared forever. Ling's voice lowered, and it contained some hints of trembling. Your father? The Phoenix clan's king? Ling Chen felt quite surprised as he muttered. So it was like that. Wait, but didn't the Phoenix clan go extinct a long time ago? How could this? He said that he would rather become an undead and wait for 10,000 years in order to awaken my power. Ling spoke with a pair of dimmed eyes as she lightly shook her head. Father! He said he was my father! Ever since I was born, I never saw my father or any of my relatives. I thought that I did not have any parents. For a while, I thought that I might have parents somewhere out there. I thought that I may be able to find them one day, but after so many years, I long since forgot about their existence as well as the very concept of parents. I thought that even if I found them, I wouldn't feel anything, and I would only see them as strangers. But after he disappeared, why do I feel so sad? I've never met him before, and I don't have any feelings towards him. So why does my heart hurt so much? Ling's voice began to tremble more and more, and 2 streams of tears ran down her face. When Ling Chen saw how Ling looked, his heart also ached. He stepped forwards and gently hugged her, saying with a sigh, "It's because he's your father. No matter how much of a stranger he is to you, and even despite having no feelings towards him, the connection between your blood will never disappear. After he left, it's impossible for your heart and soul not to ache as his daughter. Because he's your father, he was willing to give up his status and pride as the king of the Phoenix clan, and he became an undead to wait for you here for 10,000 years. In this world, the only ones who would do such a thing for you are your parents. The feelings they feel for you are not things that anyone else can copy or replace. Ling, even though your parents weren't there when you were born or while you grew up, at least now, you're no longer a girl who did not receive any love from her parents. Your father gave everything he had in the remainder of his life to you." Ling's sobbing became louder and louder, and she finally burst into tears as she was unable to hold it back anymore. She howled as torrents of tears rolled down Ling Chen's crystal armor. Ling Chen silently hugged her while hazily looking in front of him, his mind incredibly chaotic. I told Ling such things and comforted her in such a way. But I myself, my father and my mother, how should I face them? Underworld Royal City. The pillars of flames disappeared, causing all of the undead within the Undead Royal City to cheer loudly. However, an even more unbelievable scene immediately followed this. After the pillars of flames disappeared, the bright red sky became fainter and fainter until it became a faint and dark red color. Moreover, the redness of the Underworld volcano gradually decreased, and even the hotness that had persisted in the Underworld Royal City for many years began to die down. Over the past 10,000 years, this was the first time that the Underworld Royal City's temperature had gone down after the Underworld volcano had appeared, and it was the first time that the sky towards the west was no longer red. The undead all stared as their cheers became louder and louder. Even the Underworld King's face was covered with disbelief and excitement. At that moment, a blue light flashed as a man wearing jet-black heavy armor and a blue cape appeared. As soon as he appeared, he rushed towards the Underworld King, and before he came close, he started to excitedly yell, "Lord Underworld King! Great news! The Underworld volcano's flames are quickly extinguishing, and its area is quickly shrinking. It was Lord Underworld King's son-in-law. He used some sort of special method to extinguish the flames there. In less than 15 minutes, all flames within 10 kilometers were extinguished, and even I can go near there. Lord son-in-law told me that all of the flames would disappear in less than 3 hours, as will the Underworld volcano. What's more, it will disappear permanently, never to appear again." This blue darkness Underworld god was so excited that not only did the Underworld King hear him, but also most of the Underworld Royal City's undead heard him as well. Instantly, their surroundings fell silent before once again erupting with heaven-shaking cheering, as many of the undead cried tears of joy and gratitude, causing the Underworld volcano to completely disappear within a few hours. Even the invincible Underworld King was unable to do such a thing. If they had not seen the spectacle before them, none of the undead would believe such a thing. However, when they saw the flames die down in the west and blue darkness Underworld God say it himself, they could not find any reason not to believe it. The Underworld royal city had never been so raucous and lively before, and it was filled with all sorts of cheering and praises. The Underworld volcano was the source of the greatest calamity in the entire Underworld, and it was what they feared the most. If it continued to grow, there would be no place within the Underworld royal city that could be inhabited by undead. To date, the situation was so dire that they were on the verge of relocating. No one could have imagined that on the second day that the Underworld's princess had returned, the day after the Underworld king had suddenly obtained a son-in-law, that the catastrophe that threatened to destroy the entire Underworld would be resolved so quickly. The sky in the west became dimmer and dimmer, and after 1 hour, they could barely see any redness in the sky at all. During that period of time, the Underworld king's gaze had not left the west at all, and the cheering had not stopped even briefly. He did not move an inch, and if one looked at him closely, they would be able to see his lips slightly moving as he muttered, "This son-in-law is simply incredible, incredible, incredible. He was already so overpowered before becoming a Shura. If he truly becomes a Shura one day, it'll simply be incredible, incredible." Underworld royal earrings. The Underworld volcano was indeed quickly disappearing. As the final remnants of the Phoenix god's soul dissipated, the flames lost their source and were quickly extinguished. Regardless, these were Phoenix god heavenly flames that covered hundreds of kilometers. Even if they were dying down, it would take many years for them to be fully extinguished. As such, in order to speed up the process, Ling Chen started to absorb the flames. He used the fire god's bulwark to madly absorb the Phoenix god heavenly flames, making him feel incredibly delighted. The Phoenix god heavenly flames that he absorbed would not disappear, but would be forever stored within the fire god's bulwark, which he could release at any time to cause mass destruction. The destructive power of the flames from the Phoenix god was not something that normal flames could compare to. With Shi Ling's help, all of the flames gathered towards where they were. Because of how terrifyingly fast the fire god's bulwark could absorb the flames, Ling Chen had absorbed nearly half of the Phoenix god heavenly flames that had been here for more than 10,000 years after 1 hour of walking while madly absorbing. In another 1 hour or so, he had completely absorbed all of the remaining flames. Just like that, the Underworld volcano disappeared without even a tongue of flame remaining. All that was left was the scorched ground that was still blistering hot. It wouldn't take too long for the heat to dissipate, allowing the dirt to return to normal Underworld dirt. In less than 3 hours, the entire Underworld volcano had been absorbed into the fire god's bulwark. Compared to the lightning god's bulwark, which lacked energy, if all of the flames from the fire god's bulwark were released, it would be enough to completely annihilate the forgotten city, which had existed for thousands of years. Ling Chen remained with Shi Ling, who was reluctant to depart, at the center of where the Underworld volcano had been. After a while, Ling Chen used a spatial orb to return to the Underworld royal city. As the space distorted, Ling Chen appeared at the front of the Underworld royal city, because that was where he expected the Underworld king to be. When he appeared, he heard the Underworld royal city filled with deafening cheering. In fact, it was even rowdier than during his marriage to Ling Er. Ling Chen looked around and saw a dark mass of undead, and he found that the cheering had suddenly stopped, resulting in the entire city becoming extraordinarily quiet as all of the undead's gazes fell onto him. The passion in their gazes made him feel as if they had seen their own father come back from the dead. "Lord son-in-law, why you're back," the high-grade undead closest to him said, his voice filled with excitement. As he spoke, his eyes almost shone with light, and he leaned forward by almost 30 degrees in respect. Following this, various other high-grade undead acted as if they had just woken up from a dream, and words of praise flooded Ling Chen's ears. "Lord son-in-law, thank you for putting an end to the Underworld volcano. You've saved us, the Underworld royal city, and the whole underworld. Lord Son-in-Law, you're a savior sent by the heavens to save our underworld. No less than expected from the son-in-law chosen by Lord Underworld King. He's so amazing. Right after coming, he resolved the problem that has been plaguing us for thousands of years. Before, I didn't believe that Lord Son-in-Law defeated Qi Xian Wu Hen, and only now have I realized how foolish my disbelief was. Lord Son-in-Law, although you're a living creature, all of us undead will never forget your kindness. Although undead were all dead, they still feared death, especially high-grade undead. When they were in the underworld, their intellect and consciousness were akin to those of normal humans. They feared death because their consciousness would completely disappear, and they would truly disappear from the world forever. As such, they were quite similar to living creatures in that aspect. The underworld volcano wouldn't have made it so that there was nowhere safe within a short period of time, nor would it have harmed this generation of undead. However, in time, it would cause the entire underworld to disappear. Seeing the underworld volcano grow every day, they felt themselves getting closer and closer to despair. And now, the despair was completely gone. All of the undead were delirious with joy, and they were filled with boundless gratitude towards Ling Chen. The Underworld King strode over, and as soon as he came close, his shockingly loud voice completely suppressed the voices of the other undead. What are you all yelling for? Keep it down. This boy is this Underworld King's son-in-law. For this Underworld King to give him my daughter, this is something he should be doing for the Underworld. What's so praiseworthy about it? The Underworld King's tone was one of nonchalance, but his face was completely red and his eyes were bulging. Even blind people would be able to tell that he was more excited than anyone else. The Underworld King walked over to Ling Chen in 3 steps and patted his shoulder, saying, Son-in-law, not bad at all. Let's go and have a chat. As countless undead watched on with burning gazes, Ling Chen was more or less dragged away by the Underworld King to the Underworld King's residence. Right after entering, the Underworld King's facade of calmness completely disappeared. He stared fixedly at Ling Chen as if he was going to devour him, giving Ling Chen the urge to escape. The Underworld King suddenly started laughing maniacally. Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Well done, well done. No less than expected from this Underworld King's son-in-law. This Underworld King made such a good choice. Ha ha ha! Ling Chen couldn't help but roll his eyes. Was this Underworld King happier about me, or more pleased with himself? After much delirious laughter, the Underworld King finally came back to his senses. He stretched out his hand and patted Ling Chen's shoulder as he earnestly said, Son-in-law, this was all thanks to you. Not only did you bring back my daughter, but you also resolved a problem that has been plaguing us for 10,000 years, and even threatened the existence of the underworld. Perhaps you really are, like those undead say, a savior sent by the heavens. I think you're making this a bigger deal than it is, Ling Chen said in embarrassment. Come to think of it, just what did you do to make the underworld volcano disappear so quickly? From how I see it, such a thing is impossible. Let alone me. Even the Moon God clan's 3 moon goddesses working together wouldn't be able to do such a thing, the Underworld King said as he stared at Ling Chen with a burning gaze. He knew more than anyone else just how terrifying the underworld volcano was, and he knew that it was impossible for it to have been completely extinguished within 3 hours. Ling Chen fell silent, wondering how he should reply to the Underworld King. However, the Underworld King shook his head. Forget it. There's probably a secret within this that you can't tell anyone else, so don't worry about it. Just this conclusion is enough for me. After finding Chanair and seeing the underworld volcano extinguished, I've never felt so relaxed in 10,000 years. Good son-in-law! Good son-in-law! After praising Ling Chen, the Underworld King looked down as if he was contemplating something. After a few moments, he made a decision and took off the dark gray earrings that he wore, putting them into Ling Chen's hands. Son-in-law, although we're family, I'm unable to rest easy without giving you a reward for this great deed. These are the Underworld royal earrings that I've carried for tens of thousands of years, and now they're yours. As long as you wear these Underworld royal earrings, not only will you have more powerful life force and spirit, but you'll also be able to command any of the Underworld's undead at will. Though, I trust that any undead will be willing to follow your orders regardless after hearing about how you extinguished the Underworld volcano. Take it. Since I've given you even my daughter, there's no reason for me not to give you these earrings. Ling Chen took them and felt a wave of excitement. He had personally seen the Underworld King take them off. The earrings of the Underworld King, who stood on the same level as the moon goddesses, would definitely not be an ordinary item. It would definitely be Heaven's End grade, if not Mysterious God grade. Underworld Royal Earrings, Type, Earrings, Grade, Mysterious God, Equipment Requirements, any person approved by the current Underworld King. Current person approved to use them, Ling Tian. A pair of earrings passed down from the ancestors of the Underworld Royal Clan. It contains boundless Underworld King power, and it creates an irresistible compulsion for nearby undead to obey the wearer's commands, making them submit out of terror. Effects: Constitution +1, 000, Spirit +1, 000, Darkness resistance +50%. No undead are able to attack the wearer. Hidden effect: the symbol of the Underworld Royal Clan's power. Those who wear them can command the Underworld's undead at will. Mysterious God grade. It was indeed a pair of Mysterious God grade earrings. Although Lacus's tear was Mysterious God grade, it had strange effects. However, Underworld Royal earrings truly demonstrated the might of Mysterious God grade equipment. Putting aside its effects, just its stats alone gave him 2,000 points worth of stats. It was much more than the stats of all of his current equipment combined. What's more, the most powerful aspect of the earrings was that no undead would be able to attack the wearer, as well as the ability to command all of the Underworld's undead. This was authority on par with the Underworld Kings. It was so powerful that it was simply out of control. A true Mysterious God grade equipment. This was a true Mysterious God grade equipment from the legends that could dominate everything under the heavens. Ling Chen did not hesitate to put on the earrings in front of the Underworld King, and he unequipped the fairy's blessing earrings. In that instant, Ling Chen's HP rose to nearly 130,000. Ling Chen now had more HP than both Snow Cherry and Xiao Hui. Even without the evil god's mask, he would be able to survive a normal attack from even a Heaven's End grade boss. Moreover, his MP also broke through to 70,000. How is it? Are you happy with those earrings? The Underworld King asked in a pleasing tone when he saw Ling Chen put on the earrings. For some reason, he didn't feel any pain within his heart when he gave his son-in-law, who he had only known for 2 days, the pair of incredibly important earrings. Mysterious God grade sword. Happy! I'm incredibly happy with these earrings. Ling Chen immediately shouted in reply. He simply felt like crying out praises to this old father-in-law. Thinking about equipment, he suddenly remembered about Dark Samsara, which he had picked up from the fallen undead war god. He hurriedly brought it out to the Underworld King and said, "That's right, this sword is from the undead war god, and the description says that only you can give others the right to use it, so Dark Samsara." Seeing the massive jet-black sword in Ling Chen's hands, the Underworld King stared for a moment before walking forwards and tracing along its cold surface as he said emotionally, "I couldn't detect its aura in the destroyed fire purgatory, but it was in your hands. Back then, this sword was my personal sword, and it had been with me for 9,000 years. However, During those 9,000 years, I never used it once. 1,000 years ago, Qi Xian Wuhen became the most powerful undead here. Apart from me, he was the most powerful being in all of the Underworld. It was a pity that his power was simply too strong. Not only did he become an undead, he also remembered his memories from when he was alive. As such, with his pride and dignity as a human expert, I was unable to easily command him. He was unwilling to serve under me or work with any other undead. He was instead willing to stand guard at the solitary fire purgatory, so I allowed him to do as he wished. Dark Samara also followed him into the fire purgatory. Since Qi Xian Wuhen has died, so be it. After so many years, I've almost forgotten about his existence. Whenever I occasionally think about him, it's because of Dark Samsara. Whenever I thought about it, my heart always ached. Why had I been so crazy as to give it to him? At least when you give a meat bun to a dog, it'll bark in gratitude. After giving Dark Samara to him, he didn't even give a fart. Since you want this sword, I'll give it to you. It'll be 100 times better than being with Qi Xian Wuhen. As the Underworld King spoke, he stroked the sword's hilt, and a gray light flashed and entered the sword. The Underworld King took away his hands and said in a magnanimous tone, "All right, this sword is yours now. Do what you want with it." Ling Chen hurriedly equipped all of his battle equipment, and Dark Samsara was also easily equipped into his right hand. Ling Chen instantly felt incredibly excited. He had just received a pair of mysterious god-grade earrings, and now he had obtained a mysterious god-grade sword. This was something that all players could only dream about. In fact, most wouldn't even dare to dream about a mysterious god-grade sword. Dark Samsara, type, double-handed sword, grade, mysterious god, equipment requirements, a weapon that has had restrictions cast on it by the Underworld King. Only those who the Underworld King chooses can use this weapon. Currently, only Ling Tian been given this permission. A sword forged by the dwarf clan 10,000 years ago, using starfall metal and extreme darkness chalcedony. It was fused with hundreds of thousands of dark souls. It devoured the blood of the darkness god beast, and it was bathed in the underworld blood lake. In total, it took 130 years to forge the sword. When the sword was completed, the sky, sun, and moon became dark and a divine tribulation descended. It has the power to rend the heavens and destroy the earth and to annihilate stars and break moons. It was originally the Underworld King's personal sword, but the Underworld King gave it to Ling Tian. Stats: Physical attack power plus 5100, Magic attack power plus 2980, Strength plus 180, Constitution plus 10, Agility 60, Spirit plus 120, Critical chance plus 127%, Pierce chance plus 34%, Darkness resistance plus 10%. All attacks deal an extra 3000 darkness damage. Bonus stats: Parry level 14. When attacking a target at close range, the dark aura around Dark Samsara will send the target's mind into chaos. After parrying a target's attack, damage is increased by 30% when counterattacking. When being parried by a target, there is a certain chance for the target's weapon to be knocked out of their hands. Bonus skills: Darkness Corruption releases the Dark Samsara's darkness energy, turning all attacks into darkness attacks and adding a 10% chance to apply a 5-second darkness status. Can be activated and deactivated at will. Darkness Soul Suppression. When entering battle, Dark Samsara will release a powerful darkness soul suppression, causing all weapons within 50 meters that are below Mysterious God grade and LV90 to tremble in fear. If the target weapons cannot resist this soul suppression, the damage from the weapons will be reduced by 10% to 70%, and they might not even be able to be used. Nirvana Samsara unreservedly releases Dark Samsara's power, causing a boundless dark light to explode out from the sword that deals massive damage to all targets within 50 meters, bringing all targets into the dark abyss of samsara. Base damage is equivalent to 2,000%, and it has a 100% chance of applying a 5-second darkness status. Costs 920 MP, cooldown time 1 minute. Final Samsara releases Dark Samsara's dark and dismal energy. After gathering the energy, it releases a massive onslaught to the area 2 by 100 meters in front of it, dealing 2,000% damage to all targets within the range and knocking them up to 100 meters away. Requires 2 seconds to gather energy before releasing. Costs 460 MP, cooldown time 1 minute. Ordinarily speaking, a Celestial grade weapon would have 1 skill, a Heaven's End grade weapon would have 2 skills, and a Mysterious God grade weapon would usually have 3 skills. However, Dark Samsara had 4 skills. 2 were support skills, while the other 2 were attack skills. As a Mysterious God grade weapon, its physical attack power was naturally extremely high to the point that it was past 5,000. It had even given him a large amount of magic attack power as well. With Dark Samsara equipped, Ling Chen's base physical attack power was 29,892, just a sliver away from 30,000. After spending just a few days in the Underworld, Ling Chen had retrieved 2 of the Lunar Scourge's orbs, obtained the Underworld King's earrings and sword, 2 heaven-defying Mysterious God grade equipment that raised his overall stats and strength to become many times stronger, and Shi Ling had become Saint Destroyer grade. Before coming here, he had expected the trip to be incredibly dangerous and tough, and he had never expected this sort of conclusion. After lightly slashing with Dark Samsara a few times, Ling Chen happily put it away and decided to strike while the iron was hot, saying, "Underworld King, there's something else I want to talk to you about. This will only bring benefits to both myself and the Underworld." The Underworld King nodded. What is it?" Following this, Ling Chen described the trade route he envisioned between Ling Tian City and the Underworld, and he went into detail about the benefits to both parties. Throughout Ling Chen's entire talk, the Underworld King did not reveal any expressions of displeasure. He only thought for a few moments before nodding and saying, "In actuality, I've considered what you've said before. The Underworld and the Forgotten Continent are 2 separate worlds, so the things they contain are vastly different. Many of the incredibly ordinary things in the Forgotten Continent are difficult to find even in 100 years here and vice versa. However, when high-grade undead enter the Forgotten Continent, they'll lose their consciousness, and when living creatures enter the Underworld, their life force will be drained. The only one who can freely enter the Underworld and Forgotten Continent is me, and Chanair. The powerful undead, who are outside searching for new undead, are only able to temporarily leave the Underworld due to the protection of my power. In the past, the main issues were the physical restrictions and not having anyone who was completely trustworthy. As such, I gave up on this idea. A long time ago, a weirdo called Qian Gun appeared, who had a very unique constitution. Although he was human, he did not fear the deathly aura or miasma, and he could freely traverse the Underworld and Forgotten Continent. That man loved riches as much as his own life, and he often brought things from the Forgotten Continent to sell at the Underworld Royal City, and he often took some of our things to sell at the Forgotten Continent. Because all of the things that he brought were things that could not be found in the Underworld, and were very useful to the undead, he was greatly welcomed. Even I approved of this practice, and I allowed him to visit the Underworld Blood Lake. However, if you truly want to do this, as the savior of the Underworld and my son-in-law, I see no reason to refuse. Since it's like this, do as you just described. After you've made preparations, just let me know what we need to do. I'm sure that all of the undead will approve of this trade route, but if this happens, that Qian Gun fellow will suffer. All right, I'll prepare everything as soon as possible, Ling Chen replied as he nodded. Since the Underworld King had agreed, there were no problems at all. He already had a basic plan in his heart, and once the plan was set into motion, Ling Tian City would be even more attractive to players. In fact, Ling Tian City would be able to greatly increase its profits without much cost. Ling Chen thought for a moment before raising his other request. Also, there's something else that I wanted to talk to you about, although it might put you in a difficult situation. The Underworld King confidently waved his hand. You're my son-in-law, and you've solved a big problem for me. How could any of your requests put me in a difficult situation? Just say it. As long as I can do it, I won't refuse. Very well, Ling Chen said as he nodded before continuing. I heard that the Underworld has an extremely powerful defensive weapon called the Underworld God Cannon, which was made by the dwarves 10,000 years ago. You want the Underworld God Cannon? Before Ling Chen could finish speaking, the Underworld King roared, and his eyes bulged outwards. The Underworld King's reaction was completely within Ling Chen's expectations. He immediately shook his head as he replied, Of course not. I coincidentally obtained the blueprint for the Underworld God Cannon, and through an even greater coincidence, I was able to find the dwarf clan and bring them to Ling Tian City. It's just that the Underworld God Cannon is a Saint Destroyer grade weapon, so even though they have the blueprint and materials, it's difficult to make one. Before I came to the Underworld, my dwarf friends told me that if they saw the real Underworld God Cannon, they might be able to make one from the blueprint as well. So I was hoping that you would allow Ling Tian City's dwarves to come here and look at the Underworld God Cannon. The Underworld King's promise. The Underworld King thought for a moment before calmly replying. The Underworld God Cannon is the Underworld's greatest treasure and strongest defense. With the Underworld God Cannon, not even the Moon God clan dares to do anything against us. The Underworld God Cannon is also a stabilizing force for all undead. If we lost the Underworld God Cannon, it would cause mass panic and chaos. As such, it is impossible to give you the Underworld God Cannon, but it would be fine to lend it to you for a short while. No, Ling Chen shook his head. You don't need to lend it to me. All you need to do is allow some of Ling Tian City's dwarves to come and take a look. I understand your intentions, but this is the Underworld. If they enter this place, even though my Underworld King power can protect them to some degree, I cannot guarantee their safety. The more people enter, the more that this is true. After all, there is a soul contract between you and Chanair, which can perfectly protect you from the deathly aura and miasma, but I'm unable to do this for other people. It would be best for me to deliver the Underworld God Cannon to Ling Tian City, so that all of the dwarves can have a look themselves. After all, this is one of the greatest accomplishments of their ancestors. It was because of the work of their ancestors that our Underworld has been protected so well for more than 10,000 years. This way, I'll be able to somewhat make it up to the dwarves for back then. Ling Chen understood what the Underworld King meant by making it up. There were various clans that had forced the dwarf clan into despair, and the Underworld was one of them. In actuality, the Underworld God Cannon is always being carried on my person because that is where it is safest. How about this? Since Chanair's Underworld King power has awoken, there's a special connection between us. I'll know once you return to Ling Tian City, and I'll personally bring the Underworld God Cannon to you. The Underworld King coming to Ling Tian City? And bringing the Underworld God Cannon with him. Ling Chen couldn't help but anticipate that event. Ling Chen naturally had no reason to refuse, so he nodded. All right. When will you go then? The Underworld King asked. Right now. Sure. The Underworld King did not try to keep him here. You must have many things to do, and you have already accomplished your goal in coming here. If you ever need my help in the Forgotten Continent, Just speak into the Underworld royal earrings that I gave you or ask Chanair to send me a message, and I'll come as fast as possible. Now let me send you off. In the future, I'll come to Ling Tian City with the Underworld God Cannon, so tell the dwarf clan to prepare for that." Finally, the Underworld King said in a low voice with a tone of reluctance, "With Chanair following you, I can be at ease." As the Underworld King spoke, a gray spatial formation appeared beneath Ling Chen's feet, and as it spun, Ling Chen disappeared from where he had stood. One could go through any underworld door in the Forgotten Continent to enter the Underworld, but leaving was not so easy. This was because the Underworld only had clear entrances but not exits. If he had not become acquainted with the Underworld King, Ling Chen might have been stuck in the Underworld forever. As black light flashed in front of his eyes, Ling Chen appeared where he had been before he had entered the Underworld, the ghastly grounds. As he appeared, the zombies wandering around all started to amble towards him. However, after coming closer, they started to give out unpleasant sounds of terror and started to escape in all directions. Ling Chen's journey in the Underworld had finally concluded. After leaving the Underworld, Ling Chen's mind and body felt much more refreshed, and his mind and vision became clearer. It wasn't that big of a deal for him to have found 2 of the Lunar Scourge's orbs or to have obtained numerous Heaven's End grade equipment and 3 pieces of mysterious god grade equipment, but it was a big deal that he had gotten married. And the person he had been married to was Lang'er. Ling Chen felt as if everything he knew was crumbling. In all honesty, there wasn't much of a marriage ceremony, nor did it have any legal effect on him. What's more, apart from the Underworld's undead, no one else knew, but that was still a marriage. He was now a married man. Lang'er had become his wife. And Ling Chen hurriedly shook his head, unable to continue thinking about it anymore. He did not go anywhere, and instead he logged off. He had not logged off for an entire day and night, and now that he had finally left the Underworld, it was time to tell Tian Tian and the others so that they wouldn't worry. As soon as Ling Chen logged off, he heard Tian Tian and Sha Sha's laughter. Ling Chen yawned and walked into the living room. When he entered, he saw Tian Tian and Shadisika happily playing on a dance pad together. Chi was lazily lying on the sofa while reading a magazine. After entering the real world, she had been interested in this world's fashion the most. In this aspect, she was not much different from any other woman. When Tian Tian and Shadisika saw Ling Chen walk out, they both cried out and rushed over to Ling Chen. They started to lecture him about being online for so long and not resting, as well as how bad it was for his body. However, because this sort of thing was not uncommon for Ling Chen, and because he was someone who would still be fine after playing for so long, they only lectured him for a bit before letting him off. "You finally bothered to come out?" Chi looked up at him before lazily continuing to read her magazine. She then adjusted her sitting position, causing her large chest to ripple, which caused Ling Chen's eyebrows to jump. "You don't look too well," Ling Chen said casually. He felt like the seductive red blush on Chiyu's face was gone and had been replaced with a paleness. "After not seeing Little Master for a day, I've been unable to eat or sleep. How could I look well?" Chiyu looked over as she spoke in a soft and enticing voice. Ling Chen rolled his eyes and ignored her. He looked toward Xianyuan Diawu's room and looked at the clock, feeling slightly confused. Normally, Xianyuan Diawu would not be in the game at this time. As such, he asked, "Tian Tian Sha Sha, where's your big sister Diawu? She's also in the game, and hasn't logged off for a day or night either." Tian Tian replied. Shadisika continued, "Yesterday, after receiving a call from Big Sister Xiao Shui, Big Sister Dia, we went into the game and hasn't come out yet. Tian Tian and I tried to call her twice, but we were unable to get through. It looks like something important has happened, so we were afraid to disturb her and did not call her anymore. A day and night? Ling Chen once again looked at the time and frowned before saying, I'm going back into the game to have a look. If I'm not back by evening, just eat by yourselves and don't wait for us. Eh? Oh, got it. Ling Chen turned and quickly walked back into his room, returning to the virtual world again. After returning to the ghastly grounds just 3 minutes after he had left, Ling Chen immediately crushed a spatial orb and returned to Ling Tian City. After resting for a while, the woman with the red hair had mostly recovered. Below her, Ling Tian City was still deathly silent, still frozen in time. The woman opened her eyes and slowly rose up from the three-colored pterosaur, and after looking down, she lightly sighed. The time barrier is about to run out. What do we do? Where did that guy go? It's been so long, but he's still not back yet, Yola said worriedly. Evidently, he's at a place in the game where he can't freely come out or contact the outside world. It's incredibly difficult for ordinary players to go to such places, but with his strength, it's normal for him to be in such a place. The woman with red hair replied. She would often go to such places, and she knew how special and dangerous they were. Looks like we'll have to act this time. After all, this city was created because of him, and it would be a pity for it to be destroyed. Moer, prepare to enter into your battle form. As the woman with red hair spoke, the three-colored pterosaur beneath her spread its large blue wings, creating a shocking gust of wind. At that moment, the time barrier below them finally disappeared. Whoosh! The silent scene beneath them became incredibly rowdy again. The Forgotten City's soldiers flooded into Ling Tian City, causing destruction wherever they went. In the distance, Greenwood roared furiously and put all of his strength into each attack, but he was unable to escape from the white figure. Under the Forgotten City's soldiers and the Wind God Black Demon's continuous assaults, the fairy's defensive line was completely broken through, causing multitudes of injuries. However, Yun Meng Xian and the others were relatively safe, with Xian Yuan Dia Wu and Shao Qi protecting them. Even with tens of thousands of players attacking, they could not be harmed. Despite this, because of the large gap between the peak experts of the Forgotten City and them, although they were able to protect themselves, they were unable to protect many others. If it wasn't for Ing Shui continuously protecting them, they would have long since died. The woman with red hair stretched out her right hand and looked down at Ling Tian City, locking onto target after target. The blue ring on her ring finger flashed, and as she waved her finger, countless rays of light that were so thin that they were undetectable by the naked eye rained down, covering Yunmeng Xian and the others, as well as the fairies, both living and dead. In that instant, they all vanished without a trace. Only Greenwood, in the distance, was left. The Forgotten City's soldiers who had been fighting with them were dumbfounded and looked around themselves, wondering if there was something wrong with their eyes. At the east gate of Ling Tian City, thousands of thin rays of light descended, forming a curtain of blue light. After the light disappeared, the players and fairies who had disappeared from the west gate appeared there. In the sky, looking down at the players and fairies who had been safely transported, the woman with red hair's eyes became cold and cruel. She stretched out her middle finger as the red ring glowed with a strange light, and she muttered, Moer, prepare to battle. Destroy or let live as you wish. Oh. Moer, looks like we won't have to fight for now. Change back into your normal state. As the woman with red hair spoke, the three-colored pterosaur quickly turned back into a pocket-sized girl and flew onto the woman's shoulder. The red ring's light stopped expanding outwards, and the three rings simultaneously flashed. The woman in red turned to look towards the north as the coldness on her face disappeared and her expression became more relaxed, and she elegantly smiled as she said, Yola, he's so late, so why did he have to come at this moment? If he came another 2 seconds later, at least 1/5 of Ling Tian City would have been destroyed by Emoer's power. Since he's come, I won't have to commit this sin. He'll have to take responsibility for this situation. When Ling Chen returned to Ling Tian City, the sound of fighting in the west and Greenwood's roars caused his heart to tremble. Looking below, the normally bustling streets were completely empty, and all of the structure's doors were tightly shut. At a glance, the city seemed completely dead, and an ominous feeling filled his heart. Without even thinking, he used a spatial orb to teleport to the west gate, and the sight that greeted his eyes almost caused them to burst in rage. Spare no one. Dust and sand filled the air around the western area of Ling Tian City, and the large, majestic gates were gone. Only some fragments of the gates were left, and 100 meters of the walls on either side had collapsed. The ground in front of the city gates inclined inwards towards the city, looking as if it had experienced a large earthquake. From the gates to a few kilometers within the city, there were Forgotten City's soldiers wearing all sorts of armor. They destroyed whatever they saw and ruined countless structures and streets that the dwarves had poured their blood, sweat, and tears into. Outside the city, there were still countless Forgotten City's soldiers flooding in, all of them giving off an excited air like that of a rabid dog. 100 meters in front of the city gates, the gigantic mountain giant was in an attacking pose, but it did not move at all. A massive silver beam of light had trapped its body within it. Further away, Ling Chen could see Greenwood. He was currently fighting a man who was dressed in white and holding a long sword. Greenwood was the only person he saw who belonged to Ling Tian City. Everyone else was gone. Ling Chen's breathing became heavier, and flames of fury threatened to blow apart his head. An air of violence and ruthlessness burst out from his body as his body's bones cracked. He instantly understood what had happened, and he knew where these rabid dogs who were destroying Ling Tian City had come from. In his extreme rage, Ling Chen instead became extraordinarily calm. He did not immediately attack these intruders, but he instead held his communication device and contacted Yunming Xian. Yunming Xian's voice immediately sounded out. Ling Tian! Ling Tian, where are you? Ling Tian City. Ling Tian City, already. I just came back. Where are you all? Are you all right? Ling Chen did his best to suppress his emotions and tried to speak as calmly as possible. We're all fine. We were all in the west, but somehow we were all sent to the east gate. We're all there, and we're all fine, but many fairies already. The hand of Ling Chen held the communication device and violently trembled, and he closed his eyes as he said lightly, I see. Just stay there and don't come over. Don't worry, I'll chase them all away, and I'll make them pay 100 times as much. Ling Chen spoke that last sentence incredibly calmly, and it was so calm to the point that Yunming Xian and the others who were listening felt a chill go down their spines. After putting away the communication device, Ling Chen opened his eyes and deeply breathed in before summoning all of his pets. Snow Cherry, Shiling, Lungair, and Kaier, prepare to fight. Don't show any mercy or restraint against these enemies, and do your best to kill them as quickly as possible. Without any obstructions, the Forgotten City's soldiers destroyed whatever they saw incredibly quickly. At that moment, a thundering voice filled with killing intent and cold rage boomed out. Forgotten City's rabid dogs, go die! The Forgotten City's soldiers looked up to see who it was, and in that instant, their jaws dropped and their pupils contracted, because they saw that the entire sky had become a dazzling golden color. The golden sky was incredibly eye-catching, but the incredibly scorching heat and apocalypse-like air struck all of the Forgotten City's soldiers with fear. Whoosh! The golden fire descended from the sky and landed in Ling Tian City. Given Ling Chen's fury, Shiling naturally would not hold back, and she instantly cast a heaven-burning flame sea. This was one of the Golden Crow's skills, and it contained boundless destructive power. Ling's flames were much more powerful than the Golden Crow's, and her basic magic attack power was now a monstrous 172,800. With the Capricorn Orb, it became a whopping 345,600. Adding on the might of the Golden Flames, it was evident just how powerful Heaven-Burning Flame Sea was. An entire 1,000 meters area turned into a golden sea of flames, and countless Forgotten City's soldiers cried out in pain and despair. However, these cries only lasted for an instant because within the Heaven-Burning Flame Sea, no matter if it were the ordinary soldiers, elite-grade soldiers, silver-grade soldiers, or even the gold-grade soldiers who had millions of HP, they were instantly annihilated. There was no one left within 1,000 meters area. At the same time, the golden flames had also reduced all of the buildings in that area into rubble instantly. One of the Forgotten City's experts, Wind God Black Demon, just happened to be at the center of the golden flames. When the flames descended, he only looked at it with surprise before coldly harumphing. He believed that he was the Forgotten Continent's most powerful mage god, and had peerless control over magic and defense. He was arrogant to the point that he did not even put the flames in his eyes at all, but when the flames reached his body, the terrifying heat caused his expression to change. -7,300,000. The instant the golden flames enveloped his body, the wind god screamed out in pain, something that he hadn't done in many, many years. Ling Chen's rage was Ling's rage. The flames she released were not only able to destroy anything, but they also had a cruel soul-burning property, making one's soul feel unimaginable torment. 10,000 years ago, the extremely powerful Demon Emperor had been tortured to death by the Golden Crow's soul-burning flames. How could a mere wind god survive the flames that not even the Demon Emperor could endure? The damage figure of over 7 million damage caused the wind god's eyes to nearly pop out of their sockets. The 100% chance of triggering a 10-second burn effect was activated, and the golden flames continued to burn around his body, incinerating both his body and soul. He felt as if he had fallen into hell, and he screamed like a pig being slaughtered. He fell from the sky to the ground and writhed in pain, completely losing his composure as the wind god. Although the burn only lasted for 10 seconds, those 10 seconds of his soul being burned seemed like 10 centuries to the wind god. He had fought countless battles in his life and suffered countless injuries, but the pain from all of them could not even come close to the pain that he felt within those short 10 seconds. After 10 seconds passed, the soul-burning pain finally disappeared, but after those 10 seconds of torment, Black Demon had lost almost all of his strength. He lay on his back for a long time, blankly staring at the sky. The terror from the golden flames was firmly imprinted into his soul. After being ravaged by the heaven-burning flame sea, the 1,000 meters area was reduced to blackened ground, and there were countless blackened corpses on the ground. This shocking scene caused all of the Forgotten City's soldiers, Greenwood, and White Eagle to stare, dumbfounded, unable to believe what they had just seen. However, this was just the beginning. As a bird's cry sounded out, more golden fire rained down towards the Forgotten City's soldiers. Although these flames would destroy Ling Tian City, these intruders had to be killed. Every time Ling released her golden flames, it spelled disaster for the Forgotten City's soldiers. They were the powerful Forgotten City's army, not players, and they had tens, if not hundreds, of times more HP. However, apart from some Celestial and Heaven's End grade commanders, no one was able to last even 2 seconds within the flames. At that moment, a loud roar sounded out as Ling Chen flew like an arrow on Snow Cherry towards the Forgotten City's dispersing army. The instant he landed, he furiously sent out an 8-direction annihilation. Boom! The ground trembled, and sand and stones flew into the air. 10 or so of the Forgotten City's soldiers were blasted tens of meters away and instantly died. Ling Chen did not pause at all, and he sped towards more of the Forgotten City's soldiers. There was a terrifyingly savage expression on his face, and his eyes were blood-red. Dark Samsara gave off a berserk black light, mercilessly bombarding the Forgotten City's soldiers' bodies, and every time he sent out an attack, massive explosions sounded out. Boom! 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 Cries of despair sounded out as the Forgotten City's soldiers were sent flying like sandbags one after another. With a mysterious god-grade sword in one hand, a Heaven's End-grade dagger in the other, and the Leo orb which had greatly increased his physical attack power, Ling Chen's attacks were simply terrifying. When facing Ling Chen's attacks, the Forgotten City's soldiers felt a suppression that made it impossible for them to move or even breathe, and the instant they were hit, it was not like being hit by weapons, but like a mountain smashing into their bodies, causing some of them to fly even 100 meters away. Some were blasted tens of meters into the sky, others were blasted into structures, causing those structures to fall. Some were embedded deep into the ground. Every hit was a kill. Everyone in the heaven rankings were able to kill elites above their own level. However, in the entirety of China, only Ling Chen was able to insta-kill them with such ease. By the time Ling Chen had descended from the air, he had clearly memorized where all of the Forgotten City's soldiers were, and he dealt with waves of them at a shocking speed. With Shi Ling's flames and Ling Chen's attacks, the Forgotten City's soldiers, who had previously forced Ling Tian City into utter hopelessness, were crushed like ants without any ability to retaliate. In less than 1 minute, they had been completely crushed, and they were so terrified that they did not dare to approach to attack. They instead scattered in all directions, desperately running further into the city. "You want to run? You'll all die today. Not a single one of you will be spared." Dark Samsara swept out, blasting 2 soldiers away. If this sort of attack had been unleashed in the real world, their bodies would have been blown to bits with gore flying everywhere. Ling Chen looked over and said in a low voice, "Kair, make them all sleep. Don't let a single one get away." Kair began to sing, Song of Tranquility, Clear Dream in a Peaceful Night, and the gentle song, which contained Kair's nature energy, was transmitted to every corner of Ling Tian City, causing all of the Forgotten City's soldiers' steps and minds to become heavier and heavier. They began to run slower and slower, and they fell to the ground in a deep sleep. They were quickly sent into the abyss of death by Ling Chen as easily as cutting wheat. However, this was not the end of the nightmare for the Forgotten City's soldiers. After feeling Ling Chen's fury and killing intent, Ling slowly closed her eyes and put her hands together before her chest, and a black crescent moon flashed on her forehead. Immediately, countless gray lights appeared in the west of Ling Tian City. This light came from the corpses of the Forgotten City's soldiers, and countless undead slowly rose from their bodies, all of them giving off a berserk aura. The LV2, Summon Undead, skill summon 1-star elites of the same grade, and it cost a certain amount of MP. After entering the Underworld Blood Lake, Summon Undead had been leveled up to LV3, which allowed her to summon 2-star elites. After Ling'er's Underworld King power was completely awakened, Summon Undead was leveled up to LV5, and not only was its range massively increased, but it also no longer cost any MP, and everything that it summoned was Lord-grade Undead. The Unstoppable Undead Army. What's going on? What's happening ahead? The Forgotten Emperor, who was at the back of the army, stood up and frowned as he looked towards Ling Tian City. From the beginning until now, the plan of destroying the city had gone smoothly just as he had expected. The only unexpected factor had been that the wind god Black Demon had been too arrogant, allowing the mountain giant to inflict heavy casualties by lifting the ground. However, to be able to destroy the thorn that was inside his heart, losing some tens of thousands of soldiers was just a small matter. However, the sky in front of him was illuminated by golden fire. Rumbling and explosions rang out as screams filled the air, causing the Forgotten Emperor to have an ominous feeling. Before he could receive an answer, the middle section of his army that had been preparing to charge forward suddenly fell into disarray as one of the commanders far away screamed in terror. "Undead! An undead army came out of nowhere, ah!" After screaming, the commander's voice was cut off. The Forgotten Emperor was struck with shock as he roared. "Immediately go and find out what happened ahead. Immediately support the front and middle sections of the army." Support? If the Forgotten Emperor had been at the front and seen the situation, he would have immediately known that to do so was simply seeking death. With Shi Ling's flames, Ling Chen's berserk attacks, and Kair's lullaby that had a massive range, in just a few minutes, most of the Forgotten City's soldiers inside Ling Tian City had been annihilated, while the rest were being quickly slain by Ling Chen. Under the influence of Kair's Song of Tranquility, they were all in a deep sleep, making it impossible for them to escape. Shi Ling hovered in the air, incinerating all of the soldiers who tried to approach the city gates. When Ling Er started summoning undead, all of the corpses of the Forgotten City's soldiers instantly became powerful undead. Before, Ling Er could only summon in small waves, and their overall strength was quite weak, and the time they lasted for was quite short. However, she could now summon an undead army of tens of thousands with a single thought. What's more, all of them were Lord grade. What did an undead army of tens of thousands mean? Let alone the normal soldiers. Even the wind god Black Demon, who had just crawled up, felt an immense sense of terror upon feeling the terrifying aura coming from the undead. Shi Ling's control of fire was completely perfect, and the flames did not cause any damage to the undead army. Within the golden sea of flames, the undead army charged towards the Forgotten City's soldiers, bringing a cold aura and completely shocking the Forgotten City's soldiers. There were 100,000 soldiers in the Forgotten City's army, and although there were only 2,000 soldiers in the Gold Corps, they were an incredibly powerful force. However, this army of tens of thousands of undead had appeared in an instant. The Lord-grade undead army was able to completely suppress and destroy the army of normal elites. Just as the two forces clashed, the Forgotten City's soldiers immediately began to fall. The undead army trampled on their corpses as they advanced, barely slowed down by the Forgotten City's soldiers. The soldiers who fell would flash with a grey light, and then another Lord-grade undead would rise, causing the undead army to become larger and larger, scaring the Forgotten City's soldiers' souls out of their bodies. "Oh my God!" Yola's lips were wide open. An indescribable shock was written all over her adorable face. "This is too ridiculous. Oh heavens, it's indeed a bit ridiculous." "All right, it's quite ridiculous." The woman in red gently tapped her chin, her gaze continuously flickering around. In actuality, not just Yola but even she had been given a big shock from just then. She had witnessed Shi Ling's strength just 2 months ago, and even then she had been shocked. Now, Shi Ling's destructive power was tens of times more powerful, and that instantly formed undead army was simply too cruel. "This is bad." The woman in red scratched her head in annoyance. "Before, I thought that my pets were far superior to his, but it turns out, not only did I not give him a surprise, but he instead gave me a big surprise first. Humph! I won't lose to them." The pocket-sized girl on the woman's shoulder understood what she meant and unhappily pouted. That's right. With how strong little Amoir is, she definitely won't lose." The woman in red could only agree. She then turned to look at Ling Chen, who was chasing the fleeing soldiers. Although he was incredibly far away, she could still clearly hear the explosions from all of his attacks. "Looks like he's truly furious this time. Just like you, Yola, I've started to pity this continent's emperor. I'm sure that he'll very soon regret everything he's done today until the day he dies." In the distance, White Eagle, who was still fighting with Greenwood, saw what was happening in Ling Chen City and instantly frowned. "Ha ha!" Greenwood laughed incredibly happily. When he saw Ling Chen had arrived and the Forgotten City's soldiers dying in droves, his heart was no longer filled with sorrow, but with glee. The appearance of the undead army, or how powerful Ling Chen and Shi Ling had become, did not shock him. All he saw was that Ling Chen City was now safe, and all of his despair and hatred became pure glee. He coldly laughed and said, "Looks like the heavens aren't willing to let you all succeed. What's more, I'm sure that the punishment you all deserve is about to descend." White Eagle's expression did not change as he replied, "You're rejoicing too early. Don't forget that we have many celestial and heaven's end great experts within our army. There's also the Wind God, who came along with me. Do you really think you can win?" Greenwood stopped speaking, and his attacks became even sharper and more ferocious. Before, it was White Eagle keeping him tied up, but now it was the opposite. Now that Ling Chen was back, the Forgotten City's army was quickly crumbling. As such, what he needed to do was keep this mysterious god-grade expert occupied so that he couldn't help the Forgotten City's soldiers. Within Ling Chen City, the final one of the Forgotten City's soldiers died under Ling Chen's wrath. It immediately turned into a powerful undead and rushed towards the outside of the city, preparing to join the undead army. From when Shi Ling had appeared, no more soldiers were able to enter Ling Chen City, so there was not a single soldier left within the city. Looking the ravaged buildings and streets, Ling Chen raised his face to the sky and deeply breathed in. By the time he lowered his head, his gaze had become even darker and colder. He did not say anything as he turned and ran towards the outside of the city. The undead army marched towards the Forgotten City's army like a gigantic bulldozer, and with every step they took, their ranks increased. By the time the Forgotten Emperor finally saw the massive undead army, he stared for a full 5 seconds before screaming in a trembling voice, Where did these undead come from? Hurry up and attack! Get rid of them immediately!" If the undead army was so easy to get rid of, the Forgotten City's army wouldn't have been completely suppressed like this. The soldiers within the city were completely wiped out, so Kair came out with Ling Chen. She changed her song to Song of Passion, a Brave Heart. As she sang, all of the undead's physical attack power and magic attack power were greatly boosted, causing the pressure on the Forgotten City's army to increase, sending them retreating even faster. At the back, the Celestial Grade and Heaven's End Grade commanders, who had been protecting the Emperor, all rushed up. Their strength was naturally something that the ordinary soldiers could not compare to, and under their assault, droves of undead continuously fell. However, those commanders immediately found that although they could quickly destroy waves of undead relatively quickly, the numbers of undead did not decrease, but instead continuously increased. Their ranks continued to increase, and the aura from the undead army became more and more terrifying. Even with the commanders joining the fight, the Forgotten City's army was unable to stop the onslaught of the undead army. Very soon, even the commanders were surrounded by the undead army, and although they were powerful, they were completely suppressed and on the verge of being killed. The Forgotten Emperor stared ahead, and he was so shocked that his entire body began to tremble. He roared, "Black Demon! What are you doing? Hurry up and destroy them!" After enduring the soul-burning pain from Shi Ling's flames, it took Black Demon a long time to recover. During this period of time, he had continuously attacked and killed hundreds of undead, but he had not affected the army at all. When he heard the Forgotten Emperor's yells, Black Demon gritted his teeth and rose to the sky. He held his short staff across his body and chanted in a low voice as a green whirlwind spiraled around his body, becoming more and more ferocious. About 10 seconds later, he roared, and a massive tornado rose up in the 1,000 meters around him, covering the entire undead army. Instantly, the area in front of Ling Tian City's city gates became incredibly dark. Sand and stones filled the air as the tornado lifted up almost all of the undead into the sky. They were brought tens of meters into the air, and the sound from the wind felt as if it could tear eardrums. Countless -500,000 damage figures chaotically mixed together, and the Forgotten City's army, which had been completely suppressed by the undead army, could finally breathe out in relief as they looked at the countless undead howling in the air. She. The tornado persisted for 10 or so seconds before stopping, and all of the Lord-grade undead rained down from sky, crashing into the ground. However, they were, after all, Lord-grade undead. They all had powerful life force, and after falling, more than 90% roared and stood up again. The 10% that were killed by the tornado were the ones that had done most of the fighting beforehand. It was just that all of the undead had critically low HP. Most had less than 20% of their HP. As such, they were no longer a threat to the Forgotten City's soldiers, and when their commanders gave the order, they furiously roared as they charged towards the Lord-grade undead. At that moment, the song in the background suddenly changed from one of passion to one of gentleness. The instant the song changed, 6-figure green numbers rose up from all of the undead's heads, causing their HP to greatly rise. In the next second, another green figure rose up, bringing all of the undead's HP to roughly half. In the following seconds, the undead continued to regain HP until they were at full health again. The Song of Healing, Drizzle at the Light of Dawn, was not very powerful to players because most players had relatively low HP. As such, the 20% recovery every second was not as effective as Nature's Light, which could instantly bring them back to full HP. In fact, it might not even be as effective as ordinary healing spells from priests. However, when used on targets with large amounts of HP, the effects were shocking. 5 seconds. In a mere 5 seconds, all of the damage dealt by the Wind God Black Demon's 10-second tornado had been completely negated. The Forgotten City's soldiers, who had wanted to attack the undead while they were weak, were all dumbfounded, and their legs started to tremble. In the sky, Black Demon's face became as black as the bottom of a pot, and he almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. The Forgotten City's soldiers, who had been suppressed to the point that they almost couldn't breathe, had rejoiced upon seeing the undead reduced to low health, and they had thought that the situation was about to be reversed. However, the undead army had been restored from critical HP to full HP in a matter of seconds, kicking them down the abyss of despair again. The soldiers stopped advancing, staring at the undead army that looked the same as before. All of their hope and battle intent was crushed. Boom! The fully recovered undead army charged towards the Forgotten City's dumbfounded army, causing the reorganized army to once again fall into chaos. The double suppression of both their battle power and minds caused them to crumble once again, and even the Celestial Grade and Heaven's End Grade commanders were powerless to change anything. White Eagle, who was still fighting with Greenwood, was unable to remain calm anymore. After he saw that Black Demon's ultimate skill, which had a massive range, was unable to stop the undead army, his expression completely changed. He started to use his full strength in his battle with Greenwood, and he continuously thought of ways to escape. However, how could Greenwood let him go? Although Greenwood's attacks were not as strong, at least they were far weaker than White Eagle's. The fairy's nature magic was unrivaled in restricting and pinning down the opponent. Even though White Eagle used his full strength, he was unable to get away from Greenwood, and the situation between them was completely reversed. Kyr's song did not change, and she continued singing Song of Healing, drizzle at the light of dawn, causing the undead army to recover 20% of its HP every second. The undead already had quite high defense and HP, and this terrifying recovery rate meant that they would often heal more than they would be damaged. The army became a true undying army. What could cause more despair than an unkillable enemy? What's more, the unkillable enemy kept on multiplying, causing the Forgotten City's soldiers to feel like the light of hope was becoming dimmer and dimmer. Even the Celestial Grade and Heaven's End Grade Commander's battle intent was quickly crumbling. When Ling Chen was rushing out of Ling Tian City, Shi Ling was no longer standing above the gates, and she instead spread her golden wings and loudly cried out as she flew towards the Forgotten City's army that had been driven back several kilometers by the undead army. Whoosh! Golden fire descended from the sky, mercilessly falling towards the Forgotten City's suppressed army. Shi Ling's attacks were definitely not as gentle the undead's. Wherever the golden flames went, they left behind seven-figure damage figures in their wake. From the normal soldiers to the Gold Corps, all of them were instantly killed. The high-level commanders, who were not instantly killed, screamed from the soul-burning effects, and after being afflicted by the burn status, they screamed and rolled around on the ground in pain. Every time 9 Inferno heavenly flames fell, it took hundreds of lives. Immediately after these soldiers died, they became Lord-grade undead, joining the undead army. Before Shi Ling had returned, Ling Chen had fantasized many times about Shi Ling's destructive power and Ling Er's undead summoning power working together. After his journey in the Underworld, both Ling Er and Shi Ling's abilities had become much more powerful, and their cooperation reached a terrifyingly perfect level. Whoosh! After casting a few 9 Inferno heavenly flames, the cooldown time for Heaven Burning Flame C ended. In an instant, the surrounding 1,000 meters burned with golden fire, and the air and sky also became a brilliant golden color. Within the sea of flames, a whole 6,000 soldiers of various grades, levels, and professions were insta-killed. Their pitiful cries shook the heavens and moved the earth. By the time the sea of flames disappeared, the large company of soldiers had been reduced to burnt corpses, and only a few powerful commanders remained, trembling as they stood. Following this, 6,000 undead rose up. They did not immediately join the undead army, and instead, under Ling Er's command, rushed towards the Celestial Grade and Heaven's End Grade commanders, who had not been insta-killed. Shi Ling cried out, attacking mercilessly as Ling Chen had ordered. When she cried out, 6 golden balls of fire floated out from her body, circling around her. Following this, the 6 balls of golden fire quickly transformed into 6 golden phoenixes that were as big as her, and they all cried out simultaneously before flying towards the Forgotten City's unorganized army. Although these golden phoenixes could only release Shi Ling's normal flame attacks, even Shi Ling's most basic attacks had terrifying destructive power and range. Even more importantly, these phoenixes were invincible. The 6 phoenixes rushed towards the Forgotten City's army, bombarding them with fiery grenades. The golden flames continuously exploded outwards, lighting the ground ablaze, and causing the Forgotten City's soldiers to scream and cry out. The Forgotten City's army suffered heavy casualties every second. These soldiers were the ones at the back of the army, and they were the only surviving ones. In fact, there wasn't even any need for the undead army and Shi Ling to continue attacking. Just these 6 golden phoenixes were enough to send the Forgotten City's army into complete chaos and deal heavy casualties. Originally, Black Demon had thought that bringing him to destroy a small player's city was simply overdoing it. However, now, he felt incredibly sullen. He found that even as the most powerful mage god in the Forgotten Continent, he was unable to influence this battle at all. Black Demon was completely furious. He looked up at Shi Ling in the sky with a hint of fear and savageness in his eyes, as he roared in a low voice. Berserk wind blades spun around his body, and he spread out his hands as he muttered in a low voice. "All of you, go and die!" The wind blades spinning around Black Demon became faster and stronger. The airs that this attack gave off was even more powerful than the tornado that had lifted up the undead army. Ling Chen roared as he shot into the battlefield like a meteor, with Dark Samsara in his right hand and Chilling Star in his left. He simultaneously activated Soul Sacrifice and War God's Fury, and under his rapid charge, he left vortexes of air wherever he passed. Black Demon, who was preparing a powerful attack, felt a soul-chilling coldness as the Dark Samsara and Chilling Star simultaneously blasted onto his body. Nirvana Samsara! Extinguishing the heavens and destroying the earth tempest. Boom! -18 million. -45 million. The ground trembled with Ling Chen's body at the center, and an unbridled, powerful force swept outwards. The windstorm that the Black Demon was preparing to release was completely dissipated, and he flew like a cannonball into the distance. In just an instant, he flew thousands of meters away. Although he was also mysterious god grade, no matter if it was his battle power or his life force, he was on a completely different level compared to Qi Xian Wu Hin. Ling Chen had dealt 2 heavy blows to him in his most powerful state, dealing more than 20% of Black Demon's HP in an instant. To be able to reduce a mysterious god-grade expert's HP by more than 20% in an instant was something so terrifying that it almost caused his soul to leave his body. He had never seen or heard about something like this before. Bang! Black Demon's body was smashed into a small mountain, and the force caused him to only stop after he was tens of meters within it. The small mountain slightly shook, and long cracks began to extend from the middle before it became peaceful again. This scene was witnessed by White Eagle, who was still unable to escape from Greenwood, shocking him completely. By now, the Forgotten Emperor's eyes were completely bulging, and his body swayed and almost fell to the ground, smashing the almost invincible wind god to such a degree. Just what sort of power was this? Surely this was on the same level as the powerful moon goddesses. Ling Chen's current state was completely different from when he had fought the undead war god, especially in regard to his attack damage. Now, he was so powerful that he would be able to fight equally with the undead war god even without the Shura's death domain. After blowing away the wind god with a single attack, Ling Chen, who was still in his most powerful state, turned to look at the commanders who were surrounded by the undead army. A look of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes as he said in a low voice, "Lanier, go and destroy everyone in the back. Leave these people to Xiling and me." The undead army immediately stopped attacking and surrounding the enemy, and the undead instead marched towards the back of the army that the 6 golden phoenixes were bombarding. The pressure on the commanders, who were barely able to breathe under the suppression of the undead army, greatly lessened, but before they could take a few breaths, they felt a bone-chilling coldness. In their terror, they saw the player who had blasted the wind god away staring at them, his gaze as deadly as a viper's. Whoosh! A gust of wind erupted outward. Ling Chen did not bother exchanging useless words with them, and charged, while Xiling circled above them, her body shining with a golden light. She unleashed her barrier skill, Golden Heaven, causing all of the Forgotten City's powerful experts to be covered within it. -1,382,400, -1,382,400, -1, 382, 400. The world around them became completely golden, and red 7-digit damage figures started to rise up from the commanders' heads. Moreover, all of their fire resistance had been lowered to -100%, meaning that all fire attacks would deal twice as much damage. Ling Chen activated Broken Shadow and charged towards the commanders, who were like super bosses to normal players, like a ferocious tiger. With his extreme speed, the completely bewildered commanders were unable to react at all. With A, 8 directions annihilation from his right hand and A, boundless desolation from his left, the space around him violently trembled. Golden fire continued to rain down from above Ling Chen, giving one the sense of an apocalypse. Killing intent. The gold-colored world was filled with booms and explosions of energy fused with the golden sea of flames, turning it into a storm of energy that seemed to be able to destroy the heavens and earth. There were 30 or so high-level celestial-grade commanders who were instantly brought to critical HP, and they fell one by one under the continuous assault of the flames. They all saw the waves of damaged figures before dying, all of which exceeded anything they knew. They simply couldn't understand how this terrifying damage, which the Sword Saint and Wind God could not deal with even if they worked together, could come from a human and pet from a mere player city. The celestial grade commanders were all annihilated in an instant, and only the fearful Heaven's End grade commanders were left. In the human race, they were without a doubt all experts, and each of them commanded tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Wherever they went, they would act high and mighty, receiving the worship and adoration from those below them. After reaching the Heaven's End grade, apart from the mysterious God grade existences, they were essentially invincible as humans went. However, when they faced this man, who was radiating bloodlust, and that golden, fiery bird in the air that could destroy anything in the instant and deal damage figures in the millions, they felt like they were so incredibly small, and they did not even have the right to fight against such a person. In actuality, although Ling Chen had become much more powerful, killing a high-level Heaven's End grade boss was not very easy, and facing multiple Heaven's End grade bosses was still quite dangerous for him. This was because although Shi Ling and he have incredibly powerful attacks, their life force was quite weak. If a Heaven's End grade commander's attack even grazed Shi Ling, she would be insta-killed. Any ultimate skill from them would be able to insta-kill Ling Chen, but after seeing Ling Chen's devastating attacks, they fell into complete despair. Adding on the fact that the entirety of the Forgotten City's army was being completely suppressed by the Undead army, these Heaven's End grade commanders didn't have even a shred of battle intent or courage to retaliate. After all of the celestial grade commanders died, they all did the same thing. They turned and ran. Heaven's End grade experts also could feel fear and reluctance to dying. Before today, they had always seemed brave and courageous because they had never truly faced death before. As such, the will of these experts was completely shattered by what they experienced in this battle. Running away. How could Ling Chen allow that? With Broken Shadow activated, it seemed like they were standing still to Ling Chen. In just an instant, Ling Chen caught up to a Heaven's End grade mage. He sent 2 heaven-destroying slashes towards his back, and the mountain-like impact caused the escaping mage to slam into the ground and tumble far away. Despite tumbling away, Ling Chen's attacks and Shi Ling's flames still followed him, constantly attacking and burning his body. At that moment, a Heaven's End grade fire mage and a Heaven's End grade lightning mage gritted their teeth and stopped running away after seeing the escaping mage's condition. They simultaneously released powerful magic attacks as a 1-meter-long fireball and a bolt of lightning that was half a meter wide shot towards Ling Chen, accurately landing on his body. Boom! Crack! Plus 119,420. Plus 100,083. Ling Chen was completely uninjured, and he did not stop attacking in the slightest. In fact, he didn't even bother raising his head to look at those 2 mages. When their attacks hit, the 2 Heaven's End grade mages had silently rejoiced, but when they saw 2 green figures rise up, they felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Their last thoughts of resistance were completely crushed, and they desperately used their magic to teleport away. After 10 or so rounds of attacks, a large crater had appeared in the ground, and the first Heaven's End grade commander died at Ling Chen and Shi Ling's hands. During the entire process, he had been completely suppressed to the ground, unable to even stand up. He dropped his gold magic robe when he died, but Ling Chen did not even look at it as he rushed towards his next target. The instant his weapons hit his target, an explosion that could rock mountains sounded out, causing all of the people to shiver and desperately run faster. They had never seen such a terrifying person or beast before. Where did they come from? How could they have such heaven-defying power? All of this wasn't important. All they wanted to do was escape as far away as possible. Before, in the ice purgatory, Ling Chen had relied on Kair's Song of Tranquility to deal with the 3 Heaven's End grade bosses. These Heaven's End grade commanders were much higher level, and when combined together, they were a terrifying force. Apart from the water, fire, and lightning mages who were useless against Ling Chen, if they had surrounded him and attacked, the situation definitely wouldn't played out this badly. However, when a person's will has been completely crushed, it simply doesn't matter how much power they have. Humans have always had a much weaker life force than beasts of the same level and grade. There wasn't a single Heaven's End grade commander who could last under Ling Chen and Shi Ling's attacks for more than 20 seconds. None of the 20 or so Heaven's End grade commanders were able to escape from Shi Ling's Golden Heaven barrier, and they were being continuously killed by Ling Chen and Shi Ling. Further away, the Lord Grade Undead army had expanded from 20,000 undead to 70,000 undead. This was because when Ling came out of Ling Tian City, the countless number of the Forgotten City's soldiers who had been killed by the mountain giant were also turned into undead and joined the ranks of the undead army. Lord Grade Undead climbed out of the ravaged ground everywhere, completely surrounding the remnants of the Forgotten City's army. On the outside there were 70,000 to 80,000 Lord Grade Undead, while on the inside there were less than 10,000 despairing normal soldiers. The battle could no longer be called a battle, and it would be more apt to call it a one-sided slaughter. White Eagle was still tied up by Greenwood, and after being smashed into a mountain, Black Demon still had not come out. It was most likely that he had fainted within the mountain. The powerful commanders could not even protect themselves, let alone go to help the normal soldiers. The Forgotten Emperor stood by himself at the back of the army. He had essentially watched his army being wiped out by the undead army in less than 10 minutes. He continuously called out to the commanders, but he received no reply. When he did hear a reply, it was always screams filled with hopelessness and terror. After the final soldier fell, the undead army, which now numbered 90,000, was brought over by Ling to the Forgotten Emperor. They marched in perfect unity towards the Forgotten Emperor, who had seemed so high and mighty just half an hour ago, but was now scrambling backwards in terror. It wasn't that he couldn't fight. His power was at the celestial grade, but a single celestial grade human being surrounded by 90,000 Lord Grade Undead would be reduced to bones in an instant. As he scrambled backwards, he continuously screamed in terror. At that moment, a white shadow flashed over the undead army, rushing towards the Forgotten Emperor. A furious roar sounded out. "Forgotten Emperor, today will be the date of your death." Ling Chen was simply too fast, and his speed was to the point that the Forgotten Emperor could only see a white blur. Before he could react, the white blur was already right in front of him, and the cold and heavy aura it gave off made him feel suffocated. In the next instant, Dark Samsara and Chilling Star smashed into his chest. Bang! The sovereign and majestic emperor was sent flying like a sandbag. In that instant, because the explosion that had just sounded out from when Ling Chen had struck his chest was no less intense than the ones from before, he finally understood where the explosions before had come from. As he flew, he heart-rendingly screamed. He was the Forgotten Continent's emperor, someone who only experienced admiration, worship, and flattery. His every word could change the situation for the entire human world in the Forgotten Continent. A single look could cause others to tremble, and a single gesture could cause the land to be turned upside down. Who dared to go against him? Who dared to attack him? Who had the guts or power to harm him? As the person with the most authority in this continent, he couldn't even remember the last time he had been hurt, and the pain of the weapons hitting his body was not something he could bear, much less with the Scorpio orb's effects of amplifying pain by 3 times. After crashing to the ground, the Forgotten Emperor created a large crater, and he bounced a few times like a ball before finally stopping. He shakily stood up, looking dejected and depressed as he looked towards Ling Chen. Over countless years, this was the first time he had felt such immense fear. "Ling Tian, you dared to attack me. You think I wouldn't dare?" Ling Chen laughed as if he had heard an incredibly funny joke. The army of 100,000 was gone, and the Forgotten Emperor was left by himself, looking incredibly pitiful. However, there was no joy in his heart, only fury and hatred. "Why wouldn't I dare to harm you? Not only will I harm you, I'm going to kill you today." Ling Chen's words brought with them a bone-piercing hatred and boundless killing intent. Every word stabbed into the Forgotten Emperor's ears and heart like knives, causing him to feel even more terror. He could tell that Ling Chen was not joking. He really was going to kill him. When this true fear descended, he was no longer able to maintain the airs of an emperor, and he instead trembled as he yelled, "No! You can't kill me! I'm the Emperor of the Forgotten Continent's humans. All of the humans in the continent need me. I'm also protected by the Moon God clan. If you kill me, all of the humans in the entire continent will not forgive you, and the glorious Moon God clan will severely punish you. Ling Tian City won't be able to survive. You can't kill me! You can't kill me!" The Emperor who fled. The Emperor of the Forgotten Continent's humans? Protected by the Moon God clan? Ling Chen once again coldly laughed, his killing intent not weakening at all. "Anyone who dares to attack Ling Tian City and kill Ling Tian City's people, regardless of whether they're a bullshit emperor or the Emperor of Heaven, will die." As Ling Chen spoke, the Forgotten Emperor's pupils contracted. Ling Chen simultaneously activated Soul Sacrifice and War God's Fury, and his aura became more powerful by more than 10 times, causing the Forgotten Emperor to fall on his bottom. Ling Chen gave a low roar and jumped up, sending 2 heaven-destroying slashes towards the Forgotten Emperor. In his strongest state, if these 2 attacks hit, they would deal more than half of the Emperor's HP. "Stay your hand!" A loud roar came from the air. White Eagle took one of Greenwood's attacks with his back, and used the force of the blow to escape from Greenwood. He moved as quickly as he could towards the Forgotten Emperor, and while still in the air, a silver, 3-meter-long, crescent moon-shaped sword light swept towards Ling Chen like a meteor. If Ling Chen continued to attack the Forgotten Emperor, he would definitely be hit by the sword light. If he didn't want to be hit, he would have to give up on attacking and retreating. Ling Chen detected the cold aura shooting down from above, but he completely ignored it, and he instead sped forwards even faster. Cha! The sword light precisely sliced into Ling Chen's head, and the evil god's mask glowed with its red light, furiously roaring. The sword light reacted as if it had hit a reflective mirror, and it was reflected back at White Eagle, who was completely unprepared. He flipped 3 times in the air, while Ling Chen's heavy attack smashed down onto the Forgotten Emperor's shoulder. "Arg!" His cry of pain was sharp and piercing, and a 10-meter-wide, many meters deep crater appeared in front of Ling Chen. The Forgotten Emperor's body was buried within the crater, and his face was twisted from the extreme pain. All the Forgotten Emperor could do was stare at Ling Chen with despair. Nightmare. This was definitely a nightmare. 100,000 elite soldiers and many commanders, a force that could sweep through everything under the heavens, had been destroyed by a tiny player city. How could such a terrifying undead army exist? And a beast that could release golden flames simply didn't exist in the Forgotten Continent. And that player? He was only a player, so how could he be so powerful? As the Emperor of the Forgotten Continent's humans, how could he lose? This was definitely a nightmare. Definitely. Unfortunately, it was not up to the Forgotten Emperor to decide whether this was a nightmare or not. Ling Chen coldly smiled as he looked down at the Forgotten Emperor, and he raised both of his weapons. If he really killed the Emperor, the consequences would be incredibly severe. Just as the Forgotten Emperor had said, it would cause all of the humans in the Forgotten Continent to hate him, and even more seriously, it might bring the retribution of the main cities of the Forgotten Continent and the Moon God clan. The Emperor of every continent was appointed by the Moon God clan, and was protected by the Moon God clan and their Moon God representatives. Killing a continent's emperor was equivalent to killing someone from the Moon God clan, which would undoubtedly raise the Moon God clan's fury. The consequences would be unimaginable. However, none of these things were within Ling Chen's mind. He even dared charge into the Long family's residence alone in the real world. What was there so significant about killing an emperor in a virtual world? Just as he had yelled, even if it was the Emperor of Heaven, anyone who dared to touch his bottom line would be killed without mercy. Whoosh! A berserk gust of wind suddenly erupted from ahead of them, reaching Ling Chen's body in an instant. This wind did not have any attack power, and it instead brought with it a massive force. Ling Chen held his breath, and he was pushed back 10 or so body positions. At that moment, the ground next to the Forgotten Emperor burst forth as a man in black jumped out. It was the Wind God, but this mage god, who was usually majestic and awe-inspiring, was in a sorry state. His hair was in complete disarray, and he had dirt and mud all over his face and jet-black magic robe. Most of his clothes and equipment had been severely damaged by dark samsara, and he looked worse than a beggar. He did not say anything as he quickly grabbed the Forgotten Emperor and continuously teleported as he ran as fast as he could. In the air, White Eagle also recovered and rushed to the Forgotten Emperor's other side, joining Black Demon in helping the Emperor escape. If it was just White Eagle and Black Demon, even if it was just for their pride as mysterious god-grade experts, they would have stayed to fight with Ling Chen. Moreover, if they worked together, Ling Chen had no hope of winning without Shi Ling and Kair. However, they had seen Ling Chen's terrifying attack power, which caused them to feel deeply shocked and fearful. Although they had misjudged Ling Chen's overall strength, the most important thing was saving the Forgotten Emperor. Even if they could defeat Ling Chen, they couldn't guarantee that the Emperor would survive. "You want to run?" "Ha ha." Ling Chen coldly laughed and activated Broken Shadow again, shooting out like a rocket behind them. He pointed Dark Samsara forwards as he roared, "Final Samsara!" As Dark Samsara slashed down, a dark light exploded forwards, reaching the Forgotten Emperor's back in an instant. White Eagle and Black Demon thought that teleporting a few times would be enough to throw Ling Chen off, and just as they had breathed out in relief, they felt a terrifying aura closing in on them from behind. They simultaneously looked back and saw the jet-black light right behind them. "Wah!" White Eagle furiously roared and turned around. His hands blurred as tens of sword lights slashed out towards the final samsara. Beside him, a green light exploded out from Black Demon's body, quickly becoming a wind element protective screen that defended with White Eagle's sword light. All of the sword light was devoured by the final samsara. Ping! The mysterious god-grade wind element protective screen, which had absolute defense for the few moments that it had been active, was shattered as the final samsara came into contact with it. Chi! The final samsara pierced through White Eagle's body. Chi! The final samsara pierced through Black Demon's body. Following this, like a jet-black sword of judgment, it pierced through the Forgotten Emperor's body. Two grunts and a scream sounded out. The two mysterious god-grade experts' defensive skills and bodies did not stop the final samsara at all. From the massive impact from the final samsara, the three people flew away in three separate directions. The Forgotten Emperor's HP fell to less than 1/3, and in his pain, he madly waved his arm as he hoarsely roared, "Use that! Hurry up and use it!" After being hit by the massive force, White Eagle became semi-stunned, and he only came back to his senses after hearing the Forgotten Emperor's roars. He stretched out his hand and took out an item, after which he immediately crushed it with all of his strength. A ball of piercing silver light suddenly flashed in the sky, bringing the Forgotten Emperor, White Eagle, and Black Demon into the sky, causing them to disappear. Swish! Ling Chen rushed over with great winds trailing behind him, but the Forgotten Emperor and the others were gone. He deeply frowned and immediately summoned Xiao Hui to detect where they were, but he could not find them. If even Xiao Hui could not find them, that meant that the Forgotten Emperor and the others were gone. Just then, that light was definitely from a spatial tool, one that could be used even if one was in battle. Ling Chen had been reluctant to give up the chase, and he had maintained a certain distance from them, using his aggro to lock onto the Forgotten Emperor. He didn't think that it was possible for the Forgotten Emperor to escape because of Broken Shadow. However, he never expected that they would have that kind of spatial item. Looking at the empty space in front of him, he felt quite downcast. Shi Ling, Lung Er, and Kai Er all came over to his side. In the distance, Greenwood hovered in the air, staring at where the Forgotten Emperor had disappeared. There was an abnormal peacefulness in his eyes, but there wasn't even a trace of joy after beating back the enemies. Ling Chen lightly sighed and adjusted his emotions before coming over to Greenwood. Facing Greenwood's expression, he wasn't sure what to say, and he could only dryly ask, "Chief Greenwood, are you all right?" "Right now, they're all at the east gate, and they are safe." Greenwood slowly shook his head without any joy or sorrow on his face. He looked over towards the mountain giant and said, "I'm fine, but the mountain giant seems to have been sealed by some sort of barrier. For you, who could even break apart the fairy realm's barrier, I'm sure you'll be able to do something about it, right?" Ling Chen slightly nodded and did not say anything as he walked over to the mountain giant. He looked at the silver barrier that had sealed the mountain giant, and he raised his weapons. Ling Chen simultaneously activated Soul Sacrifice and War God's Fury, and he sent out an 8 directions annihilation and a Nirvana Samsara towards the barrier. The two powerful attacks smashed into the silver barrier, creating a storm of energy that was enough to ravage the surrounding land again. The point where they hit the barrier twisted, but after that, the barrier returned to its normal state. In the air, the woman with red hair shook her head as she said in a low voice, "This barrier can't be broken through with brute strength." As she spoke, the blue ring on her ring finger flickered, and many thin cracks suddenly appeared on the barrier. These cracks quickly extended, and they soon covered the entire barrier. With a ping, the barrier shattered into nothing. Boom! The mountain giant's raised foot finally descended to the ground, and it fell silent. Although its movements had been sealed, it had still been conscious the entire time, and he had seen everything. After falling silent for a long time, it said in a low, rumbling voice, "I'm not worthy of being a guardian." "Don't say that." Ling Chen shook his head. "You have a kind and just heart, and you are perfect for being Ling Tian City's guardian. It was just that the enemies were too powerful." Ling Chen felt a pain within his heart and looked towards Greenwood as he slowly nodded. "All right, Chief Greenwood, they're at the eastern part of the city. Let's go over." Everyone who Ling Chen wanted to see what was at the eastern part of Ling Tian City. Yun Meng Xian and Li Xiaoshui's heads were lowered in silence, and Xiao Qi and Suer's eyes were both red. Evidently, they had both cried for a long time. Yun Feng, Xiao Qiufeng, and the others all looked incredibly serious, and flames of fury and hatred burned within their eyes. The dwarf clan's chief and elders had also returned. Some were sighing, while others were roaring with anger. The fairies were all silently weeping, giving off an air of absolute grief. In their midst, there were 19 male fairies lying in a row, not a trace of life within them. Before Ling Chen arrived, 19 fairies had died. Compared to the Forgotten City's losses, these casualties were extremely low. However, to Ling Tian City's people, the complete annihilation of the Forgotten City's soldiers was not enough because all of the fairies who had died were completely innocent. When everyone saw Ling Chen and Greenwood arrive, everyone's emotions took a turn for the better. Chief Greenwood was the fairy clan's pillar of strength, and even though Yunming Xian was the lady of the city, everyone knew that Ling Chen was the core of Ling Tian City. Xiao Qi and Su'er came over to Ling Chen and couldn't help but burst into tears. "Big brother Ling Tian, where have you been for the past 2 days? Why couldn't we find you? Uncle Violet Reed, Uncle Green Cloud, Ing Feng, Ing Yun, and Green Mist, they all died in order to protect Ling Tian City. They were killed by the Forgotten City's people. Woo!" When the fairy clan saw Greenwood come back, they also burst into tears. From when they had been born, this was the first time that so many of their family members had departed so suddenly. The pain that they felt was akin to 10,000 arrows stabbing into their hearts. Greenwood stood in front of the fairies' corpses, silently looking down at them without a trace of emotion on his face. However, his fists were tightly clenched together and trembled violently, and 2 streams of tears ran down from the corners of his eyes to his jaw before falling to the ground. Ling Chen lifted his face to the sky and deeply breathed in. Xian Yuan Diawu came over to his side and said with guilt, "I'm sorry that I wasn't able to protect them. It's not your fault. In this situation, even you weren't able to change anything," Ling Chen replied. "It's all my fault, all of it. Has the danger in the western side been resolved?" Yunming Xian finally asked in a soft voice. "Apart from the Forgotten Emperor and his 2 mysterious god-grade bodyguards, they're all dead," Ling Chen blankly replied. Yunming Xian nodded, and she did not feel surprised or joyful. Ling Chen's words entered everyone's ears. Under the assault of the Forgotten City's army, everyone had lost hope. However, in just half an hour, they had been completely destroyed. This was a completely unbelievable miracle. However, no one was able to feel happy, and no one cheered with joy. Ling Chen walked through the crowd and silently came to Chief Greenwood's side, looking at the 19 fallen fairies together. The fairy lying in front of him was called Green Cloud, and he was an affable and gentle fairy uncle. He was in charge of the transport of materials from the fairy realm to Ling Tian City, and he always had a peaceful and gentle smile on his face no matter who he faced. There was a beautiful fairy woman kneeling down beside him, and her eyes looked like empty tunnels because all of her tears had already been used up. She was called Greenvine, and she was Green Cloud's wife. Within her arms was a young fairy girl who looked 6 or 7 years old. Her name was Ing Yen, and she was Green Cloud and Greenvine's daughter. Her skinny and weak body was curled up within her mother's embrace, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She hazily gazed at the corpse beside her, and she subconsciously cried out "Daddy" over and over again. Every time she called out, everyone could feel their hearts shattering. Ling Chen deeply understood this sort of pain because he had experienced it twice in his lifetime. The first time was when he had heard that Xian Yuan Diawu had died, and the second was when Shui Rua had died in his arms. He had gone completely mad both times, and both times he had almost been driven to death. That sort of pain was 100, if not 1,000, times more painful than the times he spent in heaven and hell. A single fairy's death meant that many families had been shattered. The fairies were essentially one big family, so the death of one fairy was a sorrowful occasion for the entire clan, and this was even more pronounced with 19 departed fairies. Ling Chen walked forwards towards Greencloth's corpse. After opening and closing his lips many times, he spoke in a hoarse voice. "Auntie Greenvine, you there, I let you down. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." He was indeed sorry. If he hadn't found the fairy clan and asked them to leave the fairy realm to join Ling Tian's city, none of this would have happened. It was impossible to tell what their future would have been like, but at the very least Green Cloud would not have died like this, and their family would still be together in blissful happiness. None of the other fairies would have died either, causing many fairy families to be shattered, and the fairies wouldn't have been brought into the conflict and strife. Back then, he had asked the fairies to leave so that they would not walk towards extinction. However, it was undeniable that he was the reason for today's tragedy. Moreover, he had asked the fairy clan to join Ling Tian's city, not to help them, but more so for himself. When Greenvine heard his voice, she spaced out for a while before looking up at Ling Chen and slowly lowering her head. She said in a soft, hoarse voice, "No, it's not your fault. You got rid of our barrier and reawakened the fairy tree. You're our fairy clan's greatest benefactor, so don't say that you let us down. Greenwood, he died defending his home. Not only was he a good husband and father, but he was also a true man. I feel proud of him. Greenvine choked on her tears and tightly closed her eyes, unable to continue speaking. In her arms, little Ingyan raised her head and said hazily, "Mommy said, Daddy is a hero, and that he didn't leave us but instead went to heaven. In heaven, Daddy will be very happy, and he will keep watching over us. So, big brother Ling Tian, don't say that you're sorry. Even though you're not around a lot of the time, you're my favorite person, and you're also Daddy and Mommy's favorite person too." Ling Chen's body trembled. His bitter and distraught heart was filled with warmth, and his eyes gradually moistened. If they had hit him, cursed at him, or ignored him, he would have felt better, but there was no blame or hatred in their gaze. Instead, there was comfort and warmth. Their hearts were so pure that one would feel their hearts breaking, making Ling Chen feel even guiltier. Why had he charged into the fairy realm and convinced the fairies to leave in the name of saving them, but in actuality, do it for his own selfish reasons? Why had he not made sufficient preparations despite knowing that something like this would happen? Why did he have to be stuck in the underworld when this happened? A big hand fell on Ling Chen's shoulder. Greenwood looked at him as he peacefully said, "Ling Tian, don't blame yourself. This really isn't your fault. Leaving the fairy realm and defending Ling Tian City with our lives was our own decision. Ling Tian City is our current home, so it is our responsibility to defend it with all of our power and our lives if necessary. Not only is it our responsibility, but it is also our glory. Before the fight, we were all prepared for such an outcome." "That's right. Brother Ling Tian, it's not your fault. On the contrary, you once again saved us. You're indeed our fairy clan's greatest benefactor. After they've reached heaven, they'll definitely thank you. How could they blame you? That's right, please don't blame yourself. It really wasn't your fault." Facing the guilt that Ling Chen felt, none of the fairies lost control of their emotions. Instead, they all comforted him and reassured him that it was not his fault. Ling Chen's heart was deeply touched, and when he looked at the fairies around him and Ling Tian City, the way he saw Ling Tian City greatly changed. Before today, Ling Tian City was just something that he had created for Yunming Xian, a present to fulfill his promise to her. The most important thing to him was searching for the things that could bring Shuiru back to life, and Ling Tian City was just something insignificant. Back then, Even the title of Vice Lord was something that he had declined many times before reluctantly accepting it. However, now, he suddenly felt a sense of responsibility towards Ling Tian City. Ling Tian City was created because of him, and it took his name. He should have originally treated it as his responsibility, and not just as a resting spot for him. At the very least, these kind residents deserved his full protection. Ling Chen did not say anything more. He slowly walked over to where Xiao Qiufeng and the others were, and with every step he took, his eyes became colder, and the killing intent around him became denser. He was looking ahead when he suddenly said, "Heavenly King Skyfall, how many players can the Skyfall dynasty immediately move out?" Skyfall stared in surprise for a moment before replying, "Right now, there are 2.48 million players online, and 1.2 million are ready to take orders at any moment. If this figure isn't enough, give me 30 minutes, it's enough." Ling Chen cut him off, his voice as cool as water, but every word he spoke caused their hearts to tremble. "Tell them to gather at the Forgotten City's Central Plaza in 10 minutes. Skyfall's eyes widened, and after a moment of confusion, his eyes suddenly blazed with passion. "Yes! In 10 minutes, they'll all be there without fail. Even if the consequences are 10 times more severe, we'll turn the Forgotten City upside down. What a rubbish royal city! What a rubbish emperor! I was just drinking and playing chess with Violet Reed and Green Moon a few days ago, and now, AI." Skyfall sighed, and the edges around his eyes began to redden. "No, I'm not telling you to go there to make a ruckus." Ling Chen shook his head. "The difference in power between a player's city and a royal city is simply too big. Let alone millions of players. Even if we had tens of millions of players, we couldn't afford to do such a thing, and we would only receive cruel punishments. I just want them to go to the Forgotten City in order to carry out a command." Ling Chen turned and slowly explained what the command was. What? When they heard his command, the Skyfall dynasty's 3 heavenly kings all gaped with their mouths wide open, wondering if there was something wrong with their ears. Yun Feng and Xiao Qiufeng also stared in shock, but when they saw how terrifyingly cold Ling Chen's eyes were, he didn't seem like he was joking or crazy. "Just do as he says," Li Xiaoshui said decisively. "If it's not enough, we can call more people." "It'll be enough," Ling Chen calmly said. He turned to look in the direction that the Forgotten City was, and he held a spatial orb in his hand as he muttered in a low voice, "I'll make you pay back what you owe Ling Tian City by 100 times today." As he spoke, Ling Chen disappeared and left for the Forgotten City by himself without saying any goodbyes. Ling Chen's furious revenge, too. Where did he go? When Yola saw Ling Chen suddenly vanish, she worriedly cried out. The woman with red hair fell silent for a moment before replying. "He's in the center of this continent. Looks like he went to this continent's royal city, the place that just attacked Ling Tian City. Evidently, he wants revenge. He's going to the royal city to take revenge? By himself?" Yola's mouth fell open. "Even if it's him, that's simply too irrational. Even though he sent the Forgotten Emperor and his 2 mysterious god-grade bodyguards running, that's the Forgotten Emperor's territory. If he goes and faces the guards there, he definitely won't be able to accomplish anything. Just the rules in the city are enough to greatly suppress him, and if he uses force, he'll pretty much just be seeking his own death." The woman with red hair stretched out her fingers and said slowly, "Since he has charged into the Long family's residence twice by himself, charging into the virtual world's royal city isn't that big of a deal. However, one can't help but worry about him. Yola, let's go and have a look." Yola smiled. "I knew it would turn out like this. Although you won't admit it with your mouth, you're evidently more worried about that fellow than I am. Let's go already." The woman with red hair rolled her eyes at the girl with golden hair. She released the spatial energy from Lachesis and departed. Forgotten City. Ling Chen came to the Forgotten City very rarely. After the Forgotten City had been unlocked, he had been there a total of 3 times including this time. That was because there was simply nothing there that made it worth his time. However, he had never thought that he would one day want to destroy this city so much. A player wanting to destroy a virtual world's royal city sounded like an extremely crazy idea. However, this crazy idea surged within Ling Chen's mind, and it was about to become a reality. Ling Chen floated in the air, coldly looking down at the Forgotten City. Because Ling Tian City had been closed, the Forgotten City, which was normally quite empty, was incredibly lively and bustling with people. There were many more players than usual, and they hurried about their business. Ling Chen slowly took out one of the high sound quality speakers that he had obtained from the Underworld and brought it to his lips, causing his calm voice to carry through the entire Forgotten City. Listen up, everyone in the Forgotten City. Whether you're a player or an NPC, I'll give you 10 minutes. If you don't want to die, immediately leave the Forgotten City. Otherwise, the consequences will be yours to bear. All of you in the Forgotten City, you have 10 minutes to leave. If you don't want to die, leave immediately. This is not a joke. Final warning. Those who don't want to die, leave the Forgotten City within 10 minutes. Ling Chen's voice was transmitted to every corner and person in the Forgotten City by the high sound quality speaker. He could have instantly begun his attack, making the Forgotten City unable to react, but he instead gave the Forgotten City sufficient time to prepare and react, putting himself on the passive side. However, this proved that although Ling Chen was cold-blooded, he was not a crazed murderer. He had given up the advantage of surprise to give the innocents in the Forgotten City a chance to escape. However, if they did not believe him, it would no longer be his fault. When Ling Chen's voice was broadcasted throughout the entire city, the Forgotten City suddenly became silent before bursting with noise. Countless players and residents felt incredibly curious, excited, nervous, or fearful as they looked up towards the sky, trying to find out where the voice had come from. The Forgotten Emperor, who had just escaped from the battlefield, had yet to recover from his shock. After returning to the central palace, he breathed raggedly, his face as pale as a sheet. Beside him, White Eagle and Black Demon were in no better shape than he was. This was especially so for Black Demon, who had been burned by Shi Ling's flames and hit by Ling Chen's attacks. One brought a soul-burning pain, while the other amplified pain by 3 times, causing him to cut a sorry figure. As for the Forgotten Emperor, he had not even steadied his breathing yet, when Ling Chen's low voice sounded out from the sky, causing White Eagle and Black Demon's expressions to fall, and the Forgotten Emperor to almost crash down to the ground. Anyone else who heard this strange voice might have taken it to be a prank or a joke, but this emperor, who had barely survived just then, knew that this person was not joking at all. This man was a maniac who even dared to try to kill an emperor. What's more, this maniac was so powerful that even his 2 mysterious god-grade bodyguards trembled in fear before him. The Forgotten Emperor simply couldn't understand or accept how a player could be so powerful. Immediately stop him! The Forgotten Emperor swayed as he rose up, shouting with a pale face. He would never normally lose control of himself like this, but today was different. He had faced death for the first time, leaving a deep trauma within his heart. Hearing Ling Chen's voice had made him absolutely terrified. White Eagle stepped forwards and said, "Please don't panic, Your Imperial Majesty. This place is not Ling Tian City, but our royal city. It will be incredibly easy for us to deal with him. In the extremely unlikely scenario that he really is able to destroy our royal city, the Moon God representative will definitely immediately sense this and come to protect our royal city." When the Forgotten Emperor heard the words Moon God representative, the Forgotten Emperor calmed down greatly. He started to pull himself together and said after a while, "That's right. This place is the royal city, not Ling Tian's city. There's nothing he can do here. However, you all saw his strength. If he goes mad here, he might cause massive damage to our side. Moreover, about the matter with Ling Tian City, although we suffered a crushing defeat, it was us who initiated it. So unless the situation is extremely dire, we cannot allow the Moon God representative to know about that. Immediately send out my commands to the entire city to stand guard and kill Ling Tian with our full strength. Ling Chen's 3 warnings did not cause any panic within the Forgotten City. Instead, everyone began discussing among themselves. Most people thought that it was some prank, scoffing at the person who was yelling so arrogantly. After all, this was the Forgotten Continent's royal city, the place where the Forgotten Continent's human strongest forces were. What's more, this place was protected by a moon god representative. Who would dare to make a ruckus here? It would simply be seeking death. At that moment, alarm bells suddenly started to ring throughout the city, and guards of all levels rushed out towards all of the key areas. They were all in full armor, and they had cold expressions on their faces, as if they were going to face a great enemy. Guards continuously patrolled through various streets as if they were searching for something, and a tense atmosphere descended on the Forgotten City. The official response from the Forgotten City caused the residents to be unable to maintain their cool. They finally realized that the voice from before was not a joke. After all, it was the first time that the entire city had been mobilized. In that moment, terror quickly spread throughout the entire city, and it continuously grew. All beings loved life and feared death, and avoiding danger was something that all beings did naturally. As such, the residents no longer ignored Ling Chen's warning, and they instead started to quickly leave the Forgotten City. The first wave of people caused a chain reaction of panic, as more and more residents used all sorts of methods to flee the Forgotten City. In less than 5 minutes, around 1/3 of the Forgotten City's residents had left. They weren't sure whether there would be a disaster soon, but they believed that even if there was a disaster, the Forgotten City would be able to resolve it. However, despite having faith in the Forgotten City, no one wanted to put themselves in harm's way, and they were not willing to joke around with their lives. The Forgotten City's guards did not stop any residents from fleeing, nor did they say anything about it. This silent acceptance increased the fear within the Forgotten City, causing more and more people to run away. Naturally, there were also many residents who chose not to leave. They didn't believe that a disaster would descend upon the Forgotten City, even if a disaster really broke out, because they believed that the Moon God representative would save them. Some residents were filled with fury and hot-bloodedness and ran around the city, helping the patrolling guards to try to find where the voice had come from. It was just that they were not even able to find Ling Chen's shadow during the 10 minutes. During this entire time, Ling Chen had been in the sky above the Forgotten City's central plaza while concealed. Unless he showed himself, let alone these guards, even White Eagle and Black Demon would not be able to detect him. Similarly, waves had been sent crashing throughout the player world. The Forgotten City's residents naturally would not recognize Ling Chen's voice, but every player did. Before, the Forgotten City's attack on the player city had also sent waves throughout the player world, but it had at most evoked pity towards Ling Tian City. No one believed that Ling Tian City would be able to survive the Forgotten City's attack. After all, although the Ling Tian City had powerful defenses and more than half of the players on the heaven rankings in front of a royal city's power, they were still incredibly weak. However, the result of the battle made them feel completely flabbergasted. Although the western part of Ling Tian City had been damaged to some degree, the Forgotten City's 100,000 soldiers had been completely wiped out. Just as this unbelievable piece of news came in, Ling Chen's icy voice sounded out from above the Forgotten City. All of the players realized that this was the beginning of Ling Tian's revenge towards the Forgotten City. However, everyone thought that Ling Tian had gone completely mad. Even if he was invincible among players, he was still just a player. A player had gone to take revenge on a royal city, and he had said such words. It was simply wildly arrogant to the extreme. Within the chaos in the Forgotten City, 10 minutes passed by incredibly quickly. Ling Chen, who had been concealed the entire time, finally revealed himself as 1.2 million Skyfall Dynasty players appeared at the central plaza beneath him. Ling Chen looked down and said in a low voice, "I've given you all a chance to escape, so don't blame me since you've chosen to be foolish. If you want to blame someone, blame that dog emperor of yours." Ling Chen raised the high sound quality speaker to his mouth as his voice, filled with killing intent, reverberated throughout the entire city. "Old forgotten dog, get out here to accept your death." Ling Chen was the first person in history to have dared to call the Forgotten Emperor Old Forgotten Dog, and in public at that. When Ling Chen's voice traveled through the city, it evoked countless cries and gasps, while also simultaneously revealing his position. Within the palace, a white figure rushed out and appeared in front of Ling Chen in an instant, glowering at Ling Chen as he hovered in the air. The silver sword in the white figure's hands looked completely ordinary. "Ling Tian! You dared to scare the entire city, and now you dare to act so disrespectfully towards the Forgotten Emperor. Do you really think that this is a place where you can do as you wish? Act disrespectfully?" Ling Chen coldly laughed, looking at the mysterious god-grade expert condescendingly. "I'm not just going to act disrespectfully towards him. Even if I can't kill him today, I'll make him feel so much pain that he wishes he was dead." "Insolence!" White Eagle also coldly laughed. "You think that just because you beat back our 100,000 soldier army, that you have the right to be arrogant here? The Forgotten City has existed for thousands of years. How could a tiny player like you do anything to it? The Forgotten City has countless experts, and destroying a player like you will be as easy as flipping our palms over. You won't be able to touch even a hair on His Imperial Majesty's head." Ling Chen looked down at the densely gathered players, and then casted a side glance towards White Eagle. "Come to think of it, who the hell do you think you are? Scram to one side and tell your old forgotten dog to get the hell out here. If he does that, I'll be lenient towards the Forgotten City and won't make it as painful when he dies. If I have to find him myself, death won't come so easily." "You?" White Eagle was completely furious. As a mysterious god-grade expert, who had ever dared to talk to him like this? He flicked out with his right hand as the silver sword suddenly exploded with light. He laughed in anger, and his mysterious god-grade aura locked onto Ling Chen. "Very well. I want to see how you'll cause a disaster for the Forgotten City and harm His Imperial Majesty. Are you sure you don't want your old forgotten dog to come out?" Ling Chen looked towards the palace, where the Forgotten Emperor was as he spoke expressionlessly. He did not put this mysterious god-grade expert, who was at the peak of all humans, in his eyes at all. "In that case, don't blame me for not giving you all a chance." White Eagle was about to explode with rage. Just as he was going to launch a fatal attack towards Ling Chen, he suddenly heard wild clamoring from below. He subconsciously looked downwards and saw an incomprehensible scene. He had no idea when so many players had gathered, but the Forgotten City's central plaza was filled to the brim. These players were all of different professions, but they were all wearing gold-grade equipment and had the same symbol on their arms. White Eagle could remember that it was Ling Tian City's symbol. At that moment, all of the players took off all of their defensive equipment, leaving only their gold-grade weapon in their hands, and started to madly attack each other. What's more, as soon as they started, they used their most powerful ultimate skills. These sudden turn of events made everyone at a loss as to what to do, and it also completely shocked everyone. All of these players belonged to Ling Tian City, and were all a part of the Skyfall dynasty, yet they were all crazily attacking each other, They had taken off all of their defensive equipment and were using their strongest weapons to launch their strongest attacks, causing them to quickly die. Before anyone could even tell what was happening, nearly half of the players had fallen to the ground. The players who had not died continued to kill each other, and even priests joined in on the killing frenzy, none of them using their healing skills. As everyone stared, dumbfounded, all of the Skyfall Dynasty's 1.2 million players had died within 30 seconds. They did not choose to revive, and they instead continued to lay on the ground across the Forgotten City's central plaza, forming an unending sea of corpses. 1.2 million players dying meant that 1.2 million players had gone down in level. This would greatly reduce the Skyfall Dynasty's overall strength, causing an unimaginable loss to the Skyfall Dynasty. The surrounding players and residents stared at this incomprehensible scene blankly, unable to make heads or tails of the situation. All they could think of was that Ling Chen City's people had gone mad, completely mad. Only a madman would do such a thing. However, Ling Chen was laughing, and quite strangely at that. Then enjoy this present. As Ling Chen spoke, he activated Broken Shadow. White Eagle, who could launch lightning-fast attacks, was left standing there by himself, staring at where Ling Chen had just been. This revenge plan had been organized by Ling Chen, but he would not administer it personally. He didn't have time to fight with the Forgotten City's mysterious god-grade experts. After easily leaving White Eagle's line of sight and aggro, Ling Chen appeared in one of the alleyways near the central plaza. Lang'er came out from behind him, and the black crescent moon once again appeared on her forehead, revealing a mysterious, dark light. In that instant, the 1.2 million players' bodies were enwrapped by a gray fog. Following this, a gray light rose up from their corpses, a light so dense that it blocked out the sunlight. Within the gray light, dark figures began to slowly stand up one by one, letting out low roars that could cause anyone's heart to tremble. The black figures spread out from where Ling Chen was, who was in the north, towards the south. In a mere 10 or so seconds, a dark figure stood beside each of the corpses. Their roars seemed to have come from hell, and a ghastly aura descended upon the Forgotten City's central plaza, causing the once bustling central plaza to turn into an eerie hell. In 10 seconds, 1.2 million Lord-grade bosses had risen up. This was Lang'er's most outrageous summoning to date. The 1.2 million undead looked like an endless black sea, completely filling the central plaza. Under Lang'er's command, they deeply roared and raised their weapons, dispersing in different directions. In that moment, countless screams of fear and panic erupted from all directions. What did 1.2 million Lord-grade undead mean? Back at the East Ocean continent's Sunrise City, Lang'er only had LV1 summon undead, and she could only summon 10,000 low-grade undead in an hour. And yet, that was already enough to strike fear into everyone in Sunrise City. And now, there was a whole 1.2 million of them. What's more, each and every one of the undead had Lord-grade power, and they were tens, if not hundreds, of times more powerful than the ones Lang'er had summoned back then. What's more, they would not disappear after a certain time, and they would remain forever unless they were killed or called back by Lang'er. If 1.2 million players had invaded the Forgotten City, they would not be worried at all. If it were 1.2 million normal undead, the Forgotten City would still be able to deal with them easily. However, if it were 1.2 million Lord-grade undead, let alone a single Forgotten City, even 3 Forgotten Cities would find it difficult to stop them. Lord-grade monsters were extremely powerful beings. Within the Forgotten City, the only unit formed completely of Lord-grade soldiers was the Gold Corps. They were at the top of the hierarchy in the Forgotten City's army, and they were the super unit that only the Forgotten Emperor could order. They were powerful, and their number was not small either. Within the Forgotten City, there was a whole 9,000 of them. If these 9,000 gold core soldiers fought together, they would be an unstoppable force, able to defeat hundreds of thousands of normal soldiers. 9,000 Lord-grade soldiers was already a terrifying number, and the Forgotten Emperor's goal had always been to expand the gold core to 10,000 soldiers. As for 100,000, that was something that he did not even dare to dream about. But right now, Ling Chen, or more precisely, Ling, had momentarily summoned 1.2 million Lord-grade undead. Their strength was essentially equivalent to 1.2 million gold core soldiers. This army was so terrifying that there were no words for it. What's more, this army did not attack the Forgotten City from the outside, but it had appeared in the central plaza, the heart of the Forgotten City. The Forgotten City's nightmare immediately descended. The hellish roars from the undead and screams from residents and players sounded out from all around the city. The undead had no compassion or mercy, and they simply followed Ling's orders. They destroyed everything in sight, and they attacked anything that could be attacked. By the time the Forgotten City's guards had gotten to the central plaza, they were completely shock stiff by the unending undead army. Following this, they suppressed their fear and terror and raised their weapons, attacking the undead. However, their deaths were proof of just how terrifying this undead army was. Before the battle between the undead army and the city guards even began, it was over. The undead army directly faced the city guards' attacks, and they bulldozed into the city guard army. Their powerful bodies and undead strength made it so that the city guards could not retaliate at all. Any casual attack from a Lord-grade being could take away droves of lives, and even multiple city guards were unable to stop a single undead. Normal city guards facing Lord-grade undead was completely impossible. In fact, it couldn't even be called a battle. It was a massacre. The battles between the undead army and the city guard army erupted in every district of the city. But in front of the massive Lord-grade undead army, the city guard army was completely useless, and they were easily passed by after being killed. The undead army quickly spread throughout the entire city, and they started to enter the business district, entertainment district, residential district, administrative district, guild district. There was also a force of 100,000 undead that marched towards the palace, stepping over the city guards' bodies in order to get there. When White Eagle and Black Demon simultaneously appeared, even these mysterious god-grade experts' faces paled and their hands and feet started to feel cold when looking down at the massive undead army. They could estimate that there were roughly 1 million undead, causing cold sweat to erupt all over their bodies. They had just experienced how terrifying these undead were. And now, 1 million of these undead had suddenly appeared within the Forgotten City. This was simply the most terrifying nightmare in the world. Burning the Forgotten City, White Eagle and Black Demon simultaneously rushed down, attacking the nearest wave of undead. Their mysterious god-grade power was simply unstoppable, and all of their attacks contained massive destructive power. However, these undead were, after all, Lord-grade undead, and they had fairly high defense and HP. Even White Eagle and Black Demon's ultimate skills were not enough to insta-kill them, and it took multiple normal attacks to kill them. This caused the last trace of hope within their hearts to vanish, and all of the hairs on their bodies stood on end. These were not normal undead, and they were instead just as powerful as the ones in front of Ling Tian City. In the battle in front of Ling Tian City, tens of thousands of elite soldiers had been completely suppressed by these undead, and all of the elite soldiers had been killed in the end. White Eagle and Black Demon could naturally tell that all of these undead were Lord-grade undead. This sort of undead was very rarely seen, and although they had both lived for 1,000 years between them, they had only seen 10 such undead. And yet, there were more than 1 million now in the Forgotten City. How could it be like this? What's going on? Black Demon uncontrollably roared. Where did these undead come from? How can there be so many Lord-grade undead? Am I dreaming? I must be dreaming. I also wish that this was a nightmare, but this is all real," White Eagle said as he gritted his teeth. "Let's go! Hurry up and report this to His Imperial Majesty. The only thing we can do is ask His Imperial Majesty to negotiate with Ling Chen in order to get Ling Chen to move away all of these undead. Otherwise, the Forgotten City might really be destroyed." Just moments ago, they had snorted in disdain when Ling Chen had given his warning, but when facing this disaster now, they felt a bone-piercing terror. They simply couldn't imagine how a player could cause more than 1 million undead to appear within the Forgotten City. This was completely incomprehensible and impossible. Ding! Warning! Warning! The Forgotten City has been attacked by an army of undead. Please immediately stop them, or the Forgotten City may be in danger of being destroyed. Ding! Warning! Warning, ding! Warning! Warning, ding! Warning! Warning! Urgent warnings sounded out across the Forgotten Continent about once every 10 seconds. Evidently, the system could tell how terrifying this undead army was, and it immediately sent a warning to the entire Forgotten Continent. By the time these system announcements sounded out, the undead army had spread to more than half of the Forgotten City. They destroyed countless buildings and killed countless city guards with every step they took. At the same time, their numbers increased. Lungair senses could cover half of the Forgotten City, and once a city guard fell, a gray fog would appear around that soldier, giving birth to a new Lord-grade undead that joined the undead army. Half an hour later, countless city guards had died, but the undead army's numbers had not decreased at all. Instead, it had increased from 1.2 million to 1.4 million. A single Lord-grade undead was powerful but not terrifying. 10 of them could cause a small disturbance, and the Forgotten City would be able to deal with even 1,000 of them. 10,000 of them would cause a significant problem for the Forgotten City, but they would not be able to cause the destruction of the entire city. But 1 million was something that the Forgotten City could not withstand at all. In front of the undead army, sending normal city guards was simply suicide, and doing so would instead bolster the numbers of the undead army. The only ones who could stall them were the Gold Corps. However, even with 1,000 Gold Corps soldiers fighting against 1,000 undead, the Gold Corps soldiers would still lose. This was because every Gold Corps soldier that died would increase the numbers on the undead side. The longer they fought, the larger the gap between the two sides would be. In the end, the 1,000 Gold Corps soldiers would be completely destroyed, while the undead army would end up with more than their original 1,000. How could they fight against such an enemy? The Forgotten City had more than half of the entire continent's experts. There were powerful celestial grade and heaven's end grade existences that did not fear these Lord grade undead and had the power to kill them. However, enough ants could kill an elephant, and this was all the more so for the undead that were only 1 or 2 grades below these experts. As more and more undead flooded into the city, the celestial grade experts only lasted for a few minutes before fleeing, and some were surrounded and killed. Heaven's End grade experts were only able to last for 10 minutes or so, and some of the more courageous ones lasted to the end, but they were completely inundated by undead and died. The Forgotten City's celestial grade and Heaven's End grade experts fell at the undead army's hands one by one, unable to stop them at all. Let alone them. Even White Eagle and Black Demon could only run after facing this undead army a few times. A ferocious beast could easily crush a group of ants, and even hundreds or thousands of ants would be no problem. However, angering 1 million ants was simply seeking death. Once these ants started to attack, even a god might not survive. The undead army spread out more and more, and by the time the Forgotten City's residents realized just how terrifying these undead were. They gave up all thoughts of resisting and fled towards the outsides of the city. The entire city descended into chaos. Residents screamed as they fled, and undead walked around killing and destroying, their roars heard everywhere. When the undead army finally spread across the entirety of the Forgotten City experienced its greatest disaster in thousands of years. The royal city of the humans was now dominated by undead. High in the sky, Ling Chen silently looked down at the chaos below, looking incredibly calm and cold. There were more than 1 million Lord-grade undead, but this number was not enough to deal with the vast Forgotten City. When the undead army spread to every corner of the city, they became spread out, and Ling Chen became dissatisfied with the damage they dealt, and the fear they induced. After a long time, the Forgotten Emperor still had not appeared. In front of the palace, many Gold Corps soldiers and commanders stoutly defended the palace's entrance, and they did not let a single undead pass by. "Looks like this isn't enough." Ling Chen's eyes slightly narrowed, as a cruel smile appeared on his face. "In that case, let's make this Forgotten City a bit hotter." Ling Chen raised his face and spread out his hands as he released the Phoenix God heavenly flames from the Fire God's bulwark in vast quantities. The sky above the Forgotten City suddenly turned crimson red, as if it were burning. The clouds disappeared in an instant, and the terrified residents subconsciously looked up at the strange sky. At the same time, they felt that the air had become unbearably hot to the point that they almost couldn't breathe. The crimson-red sky suddenly descended, and as everyone's pupils contracted, fire rained down from the sky, covering the entire Forgotten City. The instant that the fire rain landed, it began to burn furiously. This was no ordinary fire. This fire the Phoenix God heavenly flames from the Phoenix royal clan, and it could easily destroy stones and the ground. The instant that the fire rain descended from above, the Forgotten City became a city of flames. Boundless crimson flames burned in every corner of the city, and they started to quickly spread. The light from the flames also illuminated the crowds of undead and the terrified faces of residents and players. Countless players and residents died within the Phoenix God heavenly flames. At that moment, a great wind blew through the city, causing the fire to become even more intense and creating more and more seas of flame. Within the screams of fear and terror, many people used water or water magic to extinguish the flames around them. However, the Phoenix God heavenly flames were so powerful that even the Underworld King could not deal with them. How could they be extinguished by normal water or water magic? Whenever water magic was blasted onto the flames, the magic was instantly devoured, and ordinary water would immediately cause the water to start burning. Those who did not believe that a disaster would descend and believed that the Forgotten City could take care of everything finally fell into despair and fear. They immediately took their most important things and started to run out of the city. The city guards and players who had escaped looked at the fiery sky above the Forgotten City in despair, and countless residents screamed in terror. They had no heart to think of why such a disaster had descended on the Forgotten City. The flames that burned the city struck at their hearts like lightning, throwing them into hopelessness. At the center of the city, even the palace was not spared. After the fire rain descended on the palace, the entire palace began to burn. 2 Heaven's End grade water mages quickly ran over and started to use their water magic. However, they were shocked and terrified to find that their water magic not only did not extinguish the fire, but also caused it to spread. In just 10 seconds or so, the entire roof of the palace began to burn. "The Emperor's still inside. Hurry and save the Emperor!" One of the water mages cried out while looking at the burning palace. Instantly, a black figure and a white figure rushed into the palace. Soon, the pale-faced Forgotten Emperor was escorted out by them on his left and right, and they quickly flew into the air. "Oh, old forgotten dog, Where do you think you're going? The Forgotten City's being burned and there are undead all over the place. You're not thinking of running away by yourself instead of thinking of ways to resolve this crisis, are you? Ling Chen, who had been concealed, suddenly appeared and blocked the way before the Forgotten Emperor and his two mysterious god-grade bodyguards, looking at them condescendingly. The entire palace had started to burn below them, and the air was still so hot that one felt incredibly uncomfortable even tens of meters in the air.